Hello and welcome to episode number 123 of Killer POV. I'm one of your hosts, Rob G. from Plumhouse.com, formerly FearNet, Icons of Fright. With me is Rebekah McKendry.
What up?
Also Plumhouse.com editor-in-chief.
Yeah.
Formerly Fangoria.
Oh my God, these CVs are out of control.
It's a
long resume.
It's going to be a Fangoria-esque episode.
Yeah.
Elric Kane.
Of some shit. Move on.
Hey, you wrote for us.
Some shit.
Hey, he's with Blumhouse.com.
I'm not with them.
No, he did one piece. That's it. That doesn't count.
He did like a piece or
He's
something.
not one of
for
us. No.
I'm not one of them.
He's not Blumwave
Trust me,
yet.
I'm not Blumwave. I'm an independent thinker. Attica. Yeah, you can't take me, but unless you pay, and then I'll come and join you.
Yeah, no problem.
Like you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah. So, welcome to the show. Thank you, everybody, for all your positive comments over the last few weeks. We're going to do a little wrap up on Halloween because obviously that was our last episode. But
God damn, that was a long Halloween season.
my
it was a long
God.
Halloween season. It felt pretty epic and overwhelming and tiring.
I can't believe we're doing a show today, to be honest. So you get so exhausted and you're like, oh, that's right. Like, I didn't even think about it till today. I was like, oh, that's right. We have a show. Like,
Yeah.
I'm kind of in a horror coma.
Well, we're going to get into it.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, Halloween. What did you guys do for actual Halloween other than trick or treat? Because I went with you guys to take your kids trick-or-treating, which was fun.
Well, I mean, I was at the all-nighter, New Beverly all-nighter
right.
the night before, and then it kind of knocked me on my ass for most of Halloween day or morning. I think I only got about 3 hours sleep when I got home, and then I had to, kind of get revved up, and then we did with trick-or-treating with kids this young, it doesn't last as long as I would like. It's a couple hours.
I don't know.
and then
Marty
they're
was
kinda
pretty
out.
intense.
She's
She
a
was
robot.
into it.
I don't actually think she's human. She's like a little robot you fabricated.
No, Marty, we had to pull her away. And as we were walking towards the car, she was like, one more house, Mom. One more house. And then we had to go to one more house.
But next year, you're going to have a little midget on your hands, and it gets a little harder because they get, they don't want to be out as late.
Then I got two of them.
Right. Well, tell us about the New Bevel all-nighter.
I was so jealous I missed that because they showed one of my favorite movies of all time, I Bury the Living.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that. That was interesting. So, the first one they played, it was kind of just like a dream within a dream within a dream.
I couldn't believe this.
I'm sitting there, and the first things they play, so the idea of the New Beverly All Night, you do not know what they're going to play. They give you no hints. It's not like some of them where they give you clues. And we're sitting there, and the trailers start, and it was about 3 trailers in before we even caught on to the fact that they're all sequels. Like, we were just watching, and it was like, oh, Child's Play 2. Oh, cool, Child's Play 2. And then the next one, and they're all sequels in the 80s. And suddenly I looked after 3 sequels. I was like, oh, man, imagine if they played Fright Night 2. I said to Jared, that's sitting next to me, because everyone who listens here knows that I'm a nerd for that movie. And then the next trailer, I think there's like 2 more trailers. And then the third one after that was Fright Night, the original trailer. The first one that was not a sequel, and suddenly Jared looked over at me and went, oh my God. And it started Fright Night 2, which had never, I don't know if it was never had played on a screen here, but it was a big deal because Garrow, who was one of your old teammates, was sitting on the other side of me, and he said, this film's a piece of shit because he'd only ever seen it cropped on VHS, and that's one of these movies that's not really available to see. Right. But I had somehow, and I think I thought that too when I was a kid, but about 4 or 5 years ago, I must have seen it on like TMC or something, so I saw it pristine, and that's the moment where I was like, oh my God, this movie's great. And this film fucking crushed. And this is like, anyone who went to the screening will be on my side. This film plays so well. It elevates what it tells you about Tommy Lee, because the script is definitely there's 3 scripts in there fighting to be one script. But Tommy Lee's work with the gags and the effects, I feel like he is the best sequel director ever. Like, between that and Halloween 3, I'm like, shit, this is the guy. And there are a couple gags. I kind of just wish you could have seen it like that. Hopefully, I hope one day there's a release on Blu-ray or something. I know nothing about the logistics of why that film, but it's never been on Netflix streaming. And
rights are all over the place.
Yeah, it's a real shame. But
now that we know there's a print, I'd love if somebody would show it again.
Exactly. Like, it was a perfect print, and it led off the night, and like gangbusters. People were laughing, and like, it's just fun. It really is just pure fun. Like, and I think the first few minutes are a bit like, because Charlie's forgotten everything about, and that part's pretty bad when you're in denial. But as soon as it starts moving, it's just like, it's the gags that really kill me. The guy who's in Napoleon Dynamite as his uncle is fucking amazing in this film. He's always trying to seduce the girl, but he never wants to bite her because he's like, I'm having fun. Yeah. I'm going to get a date, and it's really good.
Okay, you've inspired me. I'm going to watch this and do this for my Lost on VHS piece on Monday.
I know, but I think maybe you should wait till you see a good copy, because I think the screen is part heard of
How
it.
often does it play here?
No, I mean, until a good copy is released, because that's what Gary kept saying. You'd only ever seen a shitty copy, and he was really surprised. He kept literally turning and going, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is good." So I think it would be nice if people do get to rediscover that in some format. The second film was titled Dead People. So for about 2 seconds, I'm looking at the screen going, Dead People, never heard of it. And then the next frame is Messiah of Evil, the movie. And I'm like, oh, it must have had a different title. So for a like big fan of that movie, never thought I'd see it on screen. So that was like really amazing. I think the last time I saw it on Blu-ray, I might have fallen asleep because it's that kind of movie. So there's a couple scenes I was like, I don't remember this scene. And I kept turning to Jared saying, oh, you know what? If we could take out the score and replace it with Goblin, it would become literally the American Argento movie, because it looks exactly like an Argento movie. It's all dreamy. That was rad. And then the third one was I Bury the Living, directed by Charlie Band's dad, Albert Band. And it's very classic film noir, horror, beautifully shot, beautifully made.
Yeah, the cinematography in it is amazing.
It's a really good movie. It's about a guy who runs a cemetery, and every time he puts a white pin on, which is people who are going to be buried there, and to replace it with black, somebody just dies. And so he starts going, wait, well, let's test that out. And then people die. And it keeps going and going. You're not sure if somebody's knocking them off or if he has some sort of supernatural power. It's a very surprisingly nice little movie.
It's like the size of a wall.
Yeah,
and it becomes part of the movie itself, because it's just this mosaic of pins, and each pin representing somebody. And it's just beautiful the way that they use that board. It's a good movie.
And it surprised me, I guess, because Charlie now is known for such schlock at the moment. But before that, he was making, fun, fantastic. Yeah. But his dad was like a real, like making films in that real studio system. It felt like, anyway. I'm not sure what the origins of that movie was, but that was really good. And then I should have left. This is the problem with all-nighters. If you get 3 good movies in a row, probably you should run screaming to the hills, because the next one was something I'd seen the cover of before, but all of us looked at each other like blankly when it started, called Screams of a Winter Night.
Oh, that's and it's an anthology where they all play the roles. Yeah. They all play the same roles.
It's sickeningly bad. I really think it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen in a theater. It's so amateur. The performances are like beyond amateur. It was made like 1979, so it's before Evil Dead, so it might even had a bit of influence. But it's got one of those scenes it's like just like Texas Chainsaw. A van pulls up to gets gas. 3 or 4 people come to the van. You're like, that's cool. They get back in the van. They go up to the cabin, and when they get out of the cabin, there's like a couple more people, and then literally when they go inside the cabin, there's 10 of them. 10 fucking people in this movie. Like literally, there's 10 characters, and you're going, how the hell? Where did they come from? But they're meant to have all come from the van. So, and then when you're watching anthology, you're like, oh, the story's a bit slow. If each person's going to recount a story, kill me now, because there's 10 of them, and it just none of the recounts are interesting. And all I'm going to say is #Juki for anyone who's seen this movie. You'll know what I mean. It's a bad movie. I didn't love it. I
understand why they played it, because the way that I saw it was Quentin loaned it to me.
Oh, really?
When I was doing
name drop. Good God.
Sorry. Well, he's the one who curated those. I assume him and Julie did it.
Oh, no, they were definitely Phil and Brian.
Oh,
they might have asked for that.
Phil, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah.
But yeah, he had, when I was doing something on anthology films a few years back, he was like, oh, you have to check this one out. And I had a feeling, since it was the new Bev, he probably loaned the print.
It's the most Canadian film I've ever seen, but it's from Louisiana. Like, you're watching it going, they're all Canadian mustaches and bad shirts, and you're like, they can't act, and you're like, is this Canadian? But it's not. It's from Louisiana.
It ran here, I think, 2 years ago as part of the 50 States of Horror that they did at Cinefamily, and they used that one for whatever state it is.
Louisiana.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that's maybe where I saw the cover. But anyway, I wouldn't rush out to get that one. It didn't do a lot for me. And afterwards, there was something called Blood Games, which I left during, and then afterwards was Children of Corn, so I didn't see that. But the other highlight I will say from that event was they did a couple cool things. They played a bunch of Wes Craven trailers, all on 35 millimeter. They played Friday the 13th trailers, 1 to 8 in a row.
That's awesome.
And it was pretty fun. So after like 2, you're like, ah, ha, ha, ha. And then third one came out. And then the fourth. And then you're like, oh, they're all in. They're going to go all the way with the trailers, because they're going to have an event, an all-nighter soon.
Next Friday.
But it just absolutely satisfied any urge I would have had to see those movies again. Like, there's no way you could drag me, even though all the tickets are sold out, you can drag me to that event now, because the trailers just are totally satisfying, because they're so fun, especially what's McLaughlin's one? 6?
6, yeah.
That trailer is like maybe the best trailer ever made. I mean, electricity blowing up a grave. It's like, boom, that's all I want. Yeah. But it was really fun to see them like that on film and in a crowd. So that felt like its own little mini movie. That was kind of one of the other highlights. It was a really good event, though. I got to always remind myself to leave these things a little earlier. Otherwise, you just die. You know?
Yeah, I'd say about 2:00. It doesn't matter what would be playing. I would be like zoning out.
Yeah, it's 4:45 when I left AM.
Oh my God.
That's just silliness on Halloween Eve, you know?
Can't handle that. Can't handle
Man,
that.
I can't do that like I would in college, where like I'd be walking home at 5:00 and still be awake. Like I should go get some breakfast. Now I'm like dead by
Those
about
days
2
are
a.m.
over.
Yeah.
So that was the New Beverly. I've got a couple others, but I'll wait till circle back.
Well, really quickly, I'll just shoot these out on Halloween day before I met up with you guys. I wasn't feeling so hot, so I just wanted to stay home and do a whole movie marathon. I went for Halloween 4 instead of the first or any of the other ones because, I don't know, there's something about Halloween 4 that I still like and appreciate a lot. Like, especially the opening that has all these like opening wide shots of what feels like fall to me. And I don't know, it's just fun. It's a fun, goofy, light version of what the entire franchise is, all like in one movie. So I kind of like Halloween 4. Then I went right into Cabin in the Woods, which still is a fantastic, beautifully written, well-executed breakdown of the genre. As I was watching, I was like, this would make a good double bill with Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Because I feel like if you put them both together, it's like you got the breakdown of the slasher movie, the breakdown of the Woods movie, and you kind of have totally dissected and analyzed the whole horror genre in the span of 3 hours with those two movies. So yeah, that was really great. I tried again to watch Lords of Salem the first time
I remember
since
that
it came
comment.
out.
I was laughing. I was thinking, I bet Rob's going to come around this time.
Well, because,
Did you come around, Rob?
Oh no!
Did you watch the whole thing or just a little
not
bit?
at all.
No.
I made it like 2/3 of the way through.
that's not bad.
I watched it now because I really did want to give it a shot. I felt like, from my memory of it, I was like, I think Lords of Salem is going to be a far better Halloween movie from Rob Zombie than his Halloween movies. Like,
Right.
it feels more like it belongs in October. And I put it on hoping that it would be a completely different context seeing it. And I can't explain it. I just don't get it. I can't get into it at all. None of it makes sense. It's just not good to me. It's not.
Yeah,
good
I don't
at
think any
all.
of it made sense to me either, but I didn't care. Like, there's some quality to that about it I liked more than his other movies.
I will say I do love. I forget his name. It's the lead actor who looks like him, who is in Halloween 2 as well.
he plays the boyfriend of the radio.
He's terrific. I will say that of all the things in that movie, I really love that guy and that character. I think he's a really good actor, and he's the one thing that I think is excellent about the movie. But I just couldn't. I
think it's a lot of it's the imagery and the tone.
Jeff Daniel Phillips, that's his name. He's excellent in the movie.
But I have to say, I like that out of all of Rob Zombie's movies, it's my favorite. And I still can't say it's like this great film that, I treasure. Yeah. But out of all of them, including like Devil's Rejects and House of a Thousand Corpses, I still think it's the best.
Yeah, well, I think Devil's Rejects is his best movie, but I agree that Lord of Salem, in a weird way, is the one I'd want to watch right now.
It's the most watchable for me.
And the wallpaper looked good. That's all I remember. The fucking great wallpaper. But it is weird. I've only seen it once, so I'd be curious to...
I'm going to give it another 2 years before I try.
Just watch the end. You haven't watched the end
every
yet.
other year, I'm going to try.
You'll get there. Just keep going.
See if I like it. And then, I close it off with Trick or Treat, which, I mean, everybody. Everybody loves it. It's great way to cap off Halloween. What else? Did anybody make it to the Secret 16 event?
I did.
You came in a little bit after me.
I came in a little bit after. I had Marnie with me, and they were watching Silver Bullet, and I was like, well, this is a bit much for my 2.5
Weren't they watching the Giallo one with the head cutting off?
My Dear Killer.
Yeah, they
My
watched
Dear
that one. And so I didn't get to see the Giallo one. I went home and watched Silver Bullet because I started watching it while I was there. And then I was like, well, I'm just going to go home and watch this since I can't watch it here with her. And then we went back for the Abominable one, the Abominable Snowman one with Peter Cushing. And then that night I went home and watched Horror Express. So it was just like a day of horror films.
Yeah, the first one they played was called Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, which I hadn't seen, which is another Amicus anthology. And last year he played Asylum, which is brilliant, like one of the best anthologies I've seen, like just really fucked up.
He also did Tales from the Crypt last year.
Yeah, the year before.
That was the year before. Okay.
But Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, I actually, what's funny? I liked the wraparound more than any of the stories in it. It's a cool wraparound. It's like Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Donald Sutherland, like all on a train. And you did Dr. Terror's Peter Cushing, and he pulls out these tarot cards and says, "I can predict all your futures," and you realize they're all doomed. And each story, there's too many stories for one, but none of the actual stories were great. They're all okay. It is a fun movie though. Like, it was a fun way to start, and we hadn't had Secret 16 outside of Jump Cut, so it was cool to see it worked at a new place, and it was good. And I hope we can do more things there. And then I couldn't be there all day because I had a sick kid still from Halloween. But I've been, I talked about how much I've liked Entity on here before, and but I'd only seen it once on DVD, and I've been dreaming. That's one of my top 10 list of films I've wanted to see a film print of. So I made sure I could go back at the end of the night to see this print.
Final movie, right?
Yeah, it's the last movie, and it is. I think it's easily in the conversation as one of the great masterpieces of horror, especially the first half. It's two different movies. The first half and then the second half is procedural, but it is fucking shocking. It is and it's not the rape. The rape stuff is shocking. It's the way it makes you feel like in a minute. Like, the opening scene is credits of her going to work. She comes home from work, says hi to her kids, sits down in her room, and she is slapped across the face by nothing. And it is scary. And of any horror film I've ever seen in my entire life, I care more about her in that second than any character ever on screen. Yeah. I care about her. I'm like, no, you don't deserve to be slapped and beaten by something we can't even see.
Yeah, so people that have never seen it, we're talking about Ghost, this girl that gets, and it's based on a true story.
Carla Moran's story.
Repeatedly getting raped by ghosts.
While her kids sleep in the other room, and basically, and the relationship's really weird, and there were things different, but the one thing I noticed this time is two things it has going for it. It has a director just killing it. Like, Sidney J. Furie had made some really high-end Hollywood stuff. He's like a respected director, made the Ipcris File, which is like the best Michael Caine spy film, and he just uses these canted angles and split diopter shots like Brian De Palma stuff to get across. Everything's fixed on her in close-up for the most part. So even when there's another character, like a boyfriend character, is introduced halfway through, and it's a big that's the actor who died recently, who's in The Godfather, has the horse in his bed, and you don't even see his face. It's just like over his shoulder on her for like an 8-minute scene of them in bed, and you're like, this is ballsy, really strong directing, but it is scary. And then the scenes where it really the attacks happen, Barbara Hershey's performance is just so flat out fearless for an actress of her caliber, and a lot of actresses turned it down. I was listening to a list of all the actors, and some of them would have been terrible in the role, but
she's never talked about it.
No, and she doesn't talk about movies in general. And so the other thing I chased this with is the projection booth in November was doing all horror films. So they did 4 episodes on horror, and one of them happened to be on the Entity. So I thought, and I don't listen to them religiously. I listen when there's a movie I want to, a topic, because they do it per movie. So I listened to that a couple nights ago, and it's really great because they have a guy who wrote the book on the director, Sidney J. Furie. And one of the things they talk about is how Woman boycotted the film at a certain point, probably without seeing the movie. And Barbara Hershey, they would kind of force Barbara Hershey to stick up. She was trying to stick up for the movie. And after that experience, I think she withdrew from all media in general, anything, even in legit movies she was in, she just wouldn't do media interviews because she felt like that they had respected the character, they had respected things. It wasn't about exploiting rape. It was about one woman's problem, one thing that was happening to her. And I really do think that I think it's a movie that I don't know if it's on Blu-ray. If it is,
it is.
Yeah,
it's powerful. And if you're into stuff that does kind of push the limits, it's performance is just amazing. But it's also, and the other thing, and a guest who I really want to get on the show, Ty West's sound designer,
Graham
Resnick. I tweeted straight away, the sound design of this thing is just ridiculous. Like the kicking drum feels like it's overpowering you, just like the Ghost is. And he wrote straight away, with some comments about it. Obviously, it studied it himself, and it makes sense because it's just it's more than the score. It's definitely the design.
I've only seen it once as a kid, and
that's not a time to see it.
It upset me so much. I've never revisited it, even though I own that Blu-ray.
Oh, cool.
I've never watched it because I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready to revisit the Entity.
Yeah.
It was such a powerful
That's
experience. Seeing
a good thing.
It scared the hell out of me.
I saw it when I was a kid, and I don't think I really understood what was going on because I don't even recall any of the sexual side of it. I just remember it as a ghost story.
There's a full frontal scene that's really disturbing
for a entire movie. That's all I recall it as. So
it's
I need to go back and watch
those
it.
practical effects of just using air or just invisibility.
You see impressions of her being held down. It's just so horrific that you're like, oh my God, what's going on?
Well, her breasts are a big part of, they talk about the one shot because they're using air guns to depress spots on her breasts as she's being, and the boyfriend character who kind of hasn't ever even really heard that she had ghost things happening walks in the room, and it's a full frontal nudity shot of her with her legs spread and her arms up, and the look on his face is so telling of the weakness inherent in men, because he just is like, I can't do anything. Like, he doesn't even, it's not even about the ghost, it's about the sexuality that terrifies him, and he kind of just backs out and then he gets hit off by a ghost. But then, like, he doesn't, and then he just leaves her forever because he's so scared. He's like, oh, that's too crazy for me. And you're like, there's something very truthful and kind of pathetic to me about like kind of how men are kind of scared of sex, scared of an element of the unknowing. And so it's a powerful fucking movie, man. I think there aren't many movies that have been that ballsy. And but it was cool to see that it also held up artistically. So if you see that movie based on this, definitely chase it with the projection booth, because it was really interesting to hear these three people. There's certain things I missed while I was watching it, just even lines that I didn't pick up, like a final line that surprised me. It was something, man. It was something. I don't know if I saw a couple other things I'll randomly throw off. Mr. Boogedy.
Oh, you finally watched Mr. Boogedy.
It was on TMC. I can't see. I needed to see it, but
Disney Freddy Krueger.
But it was fun. And Dash was watching the first half of it before he got a little too. He was in it, and then as soon as before Mr. Boogedy could come on screen, he was like, "Okay, I think I'm done now."
Right.
I thought that was kind of funny, but it was cool. I mean, it was fun to see a film where the whole family's in on it together. Like, the parents know there's a ghost, and they're like, "Yeah, let's see what this ghost's like." You know, it was just cute. It wasn't anything. I don't know. Like, you know, you saw something at the. Did you see one that we missed or was it Silver Bullet?
No, it was Silver Bullet. I mean, I showed up halfway through My Dear Killer, which I had never seen before, and I was really confused, which is how you should be at every Giallo movie.
Yeah, I was there for the first 5 minutes, and there was a wonderful head explosion scene.
Yeah, you were like, there's a brutal Giallo happening, and I have to leave.
I was like, Marty can't do this.
But I showed up for that, which was cool, and then Silver Bullet, which I've always loved. It's always been one of my favorite movies. I grew up loving werewolf movies, but I hadn't seen it in a really long time, and there's always that fear where, I don't know, does this hold up like a lot of those Stephen King movies? I thought it held up beautifully. It was a really solid movie. The werewolf, at least at the very end, the werewolf doesn't look great, but the way that it's
kind of teddy bear like,
but the way it's executed all the way in the first half of the movie is just great directing. Like, the way it comes out really quick and fast. And
who made that film? I don't actually.
You know what? I don't know.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, look it up. I don't know.
I really loved it, and I mean, I ended up writing my #respect column this week on Gary Busey, because. I mean, first of all, I don't think he's acting at all in the movie. I think he just showed up with, with the wild turkey in hand. It was like, this kid's my nephew, great. But no, in all seriousness, I think it's one of his most sympathetic performances, because he's the Uncle Red, and Corey Haim is his nephew who's in a wheelchair. And what I like about it is, like, he's kind of the black sheep of the family. Like, they always, like, his sister is always yelling at him for being the drunk. And yet he's the one that has this special relationship with his nephew, who's like, he's more than just his disability. Like, always sticking up for him, and like, he's motorizing his wheelchair into the Silver Bullet, the little motorcycle thing. And he's also the only one that believes them when the kids are like, "There's a werewolf in town killing people." And even though he's reluctant about it, he's like, "Oh God, don't tell your parents, but I'll help you out," or whatever. And I don't know, I had a lot of respect for him and his character in the movie, and I just thought, I guess it's that Stephen King thing, that quality. And also seeing, Everett McGill is in it. I forgot about that. Lawrence Tierney's like the bartender guy.
Oh, I didn't remember that. That's cool.
It's great. There's about to be a bar fight, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this like bat comes out, and it says "The Peacemaker." And so he's like, "You guys knock it off over there." And you're like, "Oh my God, I forgot he was in this movie." It's great.
I remember it being a great horror film when you're young. Like, that's one of those ones when you're young.
I thought it still held up pretty well.
Cool.
I thought.
So it's directed by a guy named Daniel Attias. And this guy, it was his first film, and it looks kind of like his only film. There may be some others mixed in here, but this man has become like the king of TV. He did Beverly Hills 90210 and like Miami Vice stuff, but since then he has done Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Sopranos.
Yeah, the name's definitely familiar. I think from Sopranos.
6 Feet Under, Deadwood, The Nine, Wire,
not a bad way to go.
Treme, Grey's Anatomy, Lost.
Yeah.
I mean,
Smart.
this guy is like doing every Entourage.
Good TV.
Walking Dead. He did some True Blood episodes. Yeah, this guy is like, he's done a ton of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia too.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, so he's doing well.
It's funny these people do horror.
The absolute last thing I wanted to talk about was Deathgasm, which you guys, both of you have
We loved it.
Tremendously.
We loved it.
And I think you set me up for failure.
Well, because I thought it was your kind of movie.
You were like, you were going to love this movie.
Music.
I think it's because it's music. That's probably why.
And
love it.
Yeah, it's
but
probably black metal.
I do like it, and it's actually going to be my pick of the week on our website this week, because The thing is, I liked it a lot. I rented it on VOD. It's on Amazon for like $7 or whatever. And it's got a vibrant energy to it that's very reminiscent of early Peter Jackson. So like the whole,
it's from New Zealand. So
it's from New Zealand. It's got the fun kind of heavy metal angle where these guys form a band called Deathgasm.
In a town where no one's into that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And they find pages of a piece of music that when they play it, they kind of resurrect demons.
Yeah.
So it's really fun and funny. I think my biggest issue is that I watched it alone. And I definitely,
it's a crowd movie.
I definitely feel that if I had at least 2 or 3 friends with me, we would have had we all would have laughed out loud and had fun with it.
I agree with that.
But I didn't. And the other thing is, there's just a point in it where I feel like, despite the energy in it, I feel like I've just seen too much. Like I was watching it, I don't know why it reminded me of Peter Jackson stuff, a movie called Night of the Living Dorks.
Oh yeah.
That had that vibe to it too. There was just like so many movies that I felt like I'd almost felt like I'd already seen it before. That I was like, I wish this was like better. Like I wish this was more unique for me. I'm sure if you're like 16 years old and you haven't seen a lot of horror and you watch this, it's going to be your favorite movie of ever.
And I think you hit on one thing about it though. Every year I feel like there are I felt like Housebound could play fine at home too, but Housebound was like a total crowd pleaser.
Oh yeah.
When I saw that in a room, I was like, wow.
It blew up at Stanley Film Festival.
And I feel Deathgasm, I think I had heard at South by did the same thing. Like I think at South by,
it's a crowd movie for sure.
Like it was the one that kind of crushed it with the humor, and I think that's humor. Because the first half is like a indie comedy, like a Napoleon Dynamite type of movie where there's a character who doesn't fit in, and even when it's horror, it's not heavy horror, but it's funny.
Right.
I think that's all fair. But I think
I didn't love it, but I liked it a lot, and I think it's unique enough and interesting enough that I definitely recommend it.
Hopefully, you'll see it at a party one day and go, "Wow, I forgot. This is really cool." Hopefully, it's one of those that'll catch up on you.
Yeah. Becca, anything on your end?
Yeah. Well, I saw the same films at the 16mm screening. Elric needs my bottle opener again. I must stick my keys out.
You could have just left that off the table.
There they are. Okay. After I left, Abominable Snowman. I don't even know what the name of it is. The 19
of the Himalayas. I think.
The Himalayas. Yeah,
something like that.
That one played, and after I watched that one, I was like, I'm gonna watch some more Peter Cushing tonight. So I went home and I watched Horror Express, which I hadn't seen since I was a kid. And when I was a kid, it used to kind of bore me, but I would watch it just to get to specific scenes. And I have to say, it's not much more exciting than I remembered it, but it's still a good movie. It's pretty much The Thing on a train.
Is everyone here a Cushing over Lee person in general?
No, I think Cushing's more pimp.
No, I'm not experienced with either of them.
Okay.
Like, again, I kind of missed the whole Hammer era of horror, so it's kind of
I like both, don't get me wrong. I love Lee, but Cushing is like, there's something about him that he is so classy. There's something so classy about that guy. He's so little and slight, and yet he's so has so much presence on screen.
And there's this wonderful line in Horror Express by him where because it is the thing on a train where this creature is kind of taking over people's
with
bodies.
The glowing eyes.
Telly Savalas. Yeah, I have seen
Telly
this one.
Savalas,
and there's this scene where they're like, the monster could be any one of us, and he goes, it could not, man. I'm British. And it's just the funniest thing in the world, just because it's so self-aware.
I think for me, it's seeing that Star Wars photo of him. There's that one photo where, because he's what's his character's name, that he's like the second in charge to Darth Vader or whatever, right? And he's so serious, like, because he's British, and as a kid he might have been the most serious human I've ever seen on screen. Like, it's like, who was that guy before I knew what Hammer was. And I never forget seeing a photo in some magazine once that apparently in every shot he was wearing pink like slippers, like pink joke slippers for the whole shoot. Like, so he looked like he was all and I just saw this one photo. I was like, oh, that's so fucking rad, like that somebody would have that kind of humor. But
yeah, Horror Express, I recommend it, but don't watch it when you're a teenager. I think it would probably, like, if I had watched it at 16, I would have been like, what's this crap? Like, I remember having the VHS copy and seeing it when I was a kid, and then there was enough to keep me a little interested. And rewatching now, I was like, oh, the cinematography is amazing, but it's still a little dry.
For all you teen listeners, you steer clear of this one until you're a little bit older.
A little clunky. Go to Deathgasm, guys.
Go to Deathgasm. That's for you.
Hold off till you're older.
It's not clunky. It's just a little dry.
Just go watch the Entity Teenagers.
Yeah,
you will be shocked.
I watched Don't Go Into the Woods, and I don't even know why. I was sitting there and I was looking at my bookcase and I was like, I own a lot of the Don't films, because I have like Don't Go Into the Woods and Don't Go Into the Basement and Don't Go in the House Alone and all these. And then I realized I had not seen any of them. ever. I've never watched them. I just own this huge collection of
Because you'd
don't
seen Edgar
films.
Wright's trailer.
I think that's don't. And so I decided
it's amazing. Yeah.
I grabbed Don't Go Into the Woods because it's the one with like the cover that I remembered the most from the 80s.
It's good art. Yeah, it's good art.
That fucking one.
With the sunglasses and the face. Yeah.
It's rough. I wanted it to be absolutely amazing, but yeah, it was a little rough. It's wild man in the woods killing teens and through the one thing I will say is it definitely kind of took a nod from Texas Chainsaw because there's one of the guys who goes camping with him is in a wheelchair. Franklin. Which might be some of the most amusing scenes in the entire movie because it's him like trying to get up like a dirt road and things like that. Like you can tell it's just in there for comedic relief, but it was kind of.
Since when is it funny to laugh at people in wheelchairs?
It's along the same kind of Franklin lines as Texas Chainsaw, and you're like, so this is what they took
Franklin
from that
deserved
movie?
Everything he got.
If we're gonna reference Texas Chainsaw, we'll just take it from that. So but the rest of the movie, I mean, it's a slasher film. It's got a whole bunch of kills in it. I can't really say much past that. But
I remember the cover, but never saw the film.
Yeah. And then the movie that I was really excited about, I've done this series of articles on Blumhouse this week, and I have another one going up next week on obscure and underrated vampire films. And so I was catching up on a whole bunch of those. But the one that I just absolutely fell in love with again, which I didn't like when I saw it the first time, was Night Flyer.
Oh, yeah. I've never seen that one.
Oh, yeah. The Mark Pavia one. That's great. It's a great one. Is
that Stephen King?
It's Stephen King, and it came out, I want to say, like late
90s, I think.
I want to say like 90s.
Before or after Langoliers and all that kind of.
It was like in the same chunking with
Yeah, that's what I thought. It was straight to video kind of stuff.
Langoliers, Tommy Knockers was around that same time.
Who's in it? What's his name? Miguel Ferrer's in it, who's great.
Yeah, going back to Twin Peaks, they announced today.
I had seen it when it first came out, and only thing I remembered about it was that the vampire was kind of badass and that it was gory. Like I remembered it being really gory. And going back and watching it again, it's a really, I mean, the plot itself is kind of hilarious. This vampire who flies around, he's a pilot and a vampire, and he flies from kind of town to town vampirizing people. So the plot itself is a little kind of like, but the way that they do it, there are just some scenes in it that are amazing. And this reporter starts getting interested in these like serial murders that seem to be following airlines. And he starts investigating, but then he starts losing his mind as he gets closer and closer to the vampire. And there are some scenes in it, like there's a bathroom scene in it that's just absolutely terrifying. And it just kind of took me by surprise because I was like, I remember the monster being cool, but that was about it. But it's actually a really good movie. So.
Yeah, and actually Mark Pavia, the guy that directed it, old friend of mine, I met him when I first moved to town. Really, really nice guy. And I mean, he doesn't have a lot of directing credits. That's one of the few. But he's one of those, he'd be great on the show one day. He's one of those that's been in the business for so long and it come close. So he like almost directed the Texas Chainsaw remake and like got so close to so many big properties and it just never happened. And they just announced he's directing a movie now called Fender Bender. It is the first original Scream Factory production. Like they are now making their own original movies, and that is the first one out of the gate.
Wow, that's an interesting choice. They never told us about that on air.
No, yeah, about a week or two ago was the announcement that it's their first one that they're fully making themselves.
Wow.
So I'm really excited. He'll be a good guest around the time that movie comes out.
Yeah.
I think it's cool that they're trying to make their own content. I mean, some of these companies that are making content are doing really well. So
yeah,
fingers crossed. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
The last one I saw was a movie I'd never seen. You guys probably have seen it, called Prison.
Yeah,
I think I actually saw AJ's tweet about it, and then it happened to be on air. He tweeted saying like, "Oh, this is a real deal movie."
Is that a Scream Factory release?
Yeah.
It's Rennie Harlan directed. It's a Charles Band production, but it doesn't feel like one. It feels like a very different film because it's all shot on location in a real prison using their real gas chamber and everything. Like, I mean, you can feel the authenticity kind of dripping off it, but it's a good movie. It's like a solid, fun ghost movie. You know, it's like better than Shocker. I mean, you know, sorry, Brian, but it feels like it has more going on. It's in that world, but without some of the the off scenes. Oh, it has no Peter Berg,
but it's got Vigo.
It has Vigo, and it has a lot of fun, supporting actors that you recognize along the way. It was just a fun movie. I liked it.
By the way, it's where Kane Hodder. It's how Kane Hodder became Jason because John Carl Buechler did effects on it, and his gig after that was directing Friday 7. And he's like, you know what? There was a guy that did the electrocution in prison. His name's Kane Hodder. He'd be great.
That's interesting.
So
cool.
That's what the best thing to come out of that movie.
I saw it for free on one of the channels late at night, and I just thought it was good. It held my attention. I thought it was like it was just like a well-made film. Randy Harlan's a good director. I feel like some of these directors, the bigger they got, the worse their work got.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I feel like Randy Harlan knew how to make a movie.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not in question.
Days.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I think it's when you're giving them $140 million budgets, it gets hard.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth watching. I thought it was cool.
Cool.
All right, well, let's grab our guest and we'll be right back. All righty, and we are back. And this is one of the guests that all of us collectively have talked about wanting to have on the show since we started the show. And it took a little while because much like somebody like Fezidin, he's not based out here. So we had to wait for schedules to line up and for him to be in California. But somebody that I think every horror fan that grew up reading Fangoria knows. And I have a lot of fun little personal stories that I want to share once we get into this. But I want to welcome the former editor-in-chief of Fangoria magazine, Mr. Tony Timpone.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah,
you're making me blush.
Where did we see him? It was at the Sacrament after party or pre-party.
Yes, a year ago.
It was great. Yeah, we were at the Sacrament. I actually love this. I'm talking to Elric at the bar, and some guy just keeps bumping into me. And I'm like, who's this jerk? Is this some drunk guy? Then I turn around and somebody's like, hey! I'm like, oh my God.
I snuck up behind you.
Yes, you did. Total shock.
Tugging on your bag.
Last person I expected.
Gave you a wedgie.
That's, the
As
whole
you
deal.
should. And I was out of town for that screening, and I remember when they told me that they saw you, I was seriously like bummed because I hadn't seen you since I left New York.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, and I said this just a minute ago, but it's true. And I think I said it to Rob at the time that your name was the first name I had kind of discovered in horror. And I mean, before directors like William Friedkin and Polanski, who were my first loves. And I think it was because you open a magazine and I grew up in New Zealand, so I'm reading this in New Zealand. So your magazine is all the way on the other side of the world. I'm sitting there late at night, like maybe 10 or 12 or whatever, opening this magazine, scanning the thing, going like, wow, who put this together? Like, why does this exist? And the only name that would recur from issue to issue was Tony Timpone. So that name, so I'm not part of the crowd who was going to the festivals and the conventions you guys were doing because I was over there, but your name meant something to me, even though I didn't even probably know what you looked like.
How hard was it to get a Fangoria in New Zealand?
It wasn't that hard. At comic book stores. They were always at comic book stores. So comic books had become just kind of hit New Zealand right when I was probably 10. And we're big
Perfect
suddenly.
age, yeah.
It just was hitting. Marvel was just bam, hitting big. And so the same thing happened with horror. And I would it took a while of being into horror, but to notice there was a magazine. And the cool thing is, it was the only magazine that made it out that far. So if there were other magazines, like now we have a plethora of other outlets, there was none of them made it. I'd never seen a Gore Zone. I'd never heard of Horror Hunt. I know they're probably more recent, but
Gore Zone was ours too.
Right. But I'm saying it never made it over there. So the only thing that was ever on the shelf. So to me, the only magazine that existed was Fangoria, and you were the only name in horror. So enjoy that.
Nice.
Wow.
Do you know Ann Timpson from New Zealand?
Yeah.
Well, he told me once that he used to enjoy picking up Fangoria because my name sounded like his name, Ann Timpson, Anthony Timpone.
I thought about it on the way here. I thought about the similarities of your names. Honestly, that's funny.
That is funny.
But it is, it's a big deal. It's when you're a kid reading this stuff,
Yeah. And I mean, forgive me for getting sentimental, audience and Tony in the room, but it meant a lot to me just because I had been going to Fangoria Weekend of Horrors convention since I was about 15 years old in New York City, and for the longest time as a little kid, you were the person I recognized as Fangoria because you were the host and you were moderating the panels and talking to everybody. And ever since I was 15. And I don't know why, I guess it's just the way my parents raised me. At the end of every show, I'd find you and be like, hey, thank you so much. I had a really great time this weekend. And I'd say it probably took you about 10 years before you recognized that I was the same kid.
That was you?
This weird kid.
I was a kid. But I always
the kid with manners.
But I always felt the need to thank the guy that was hosting this thing because I did. I mean, that was, that's such a formative time for all of us when we're, kind of 12, 13, 15, getting into horror. And then you meet all these other people at this giant event that are into the same thing as you, and you don't feel as alone as, you're like, oh, maybe I'm not. I am a weirdo, but there's a lot of other weirdos too that like this stuff. So I always appreciated that. You were always very nice to me as a kid. And then much, much, much later on when I had started Icons of Fright, I had done Icons of Fright for fun. I had done music for a long time and I kind of was sick of that. And I just wanted to do something that didn't have any business angle to it. And it's like I went back to writing about my love of horror movies, which I grew up on. And you were the first interview I ever did for Icons of Fright. Very first interview I ever did in general. And you just were always so supportive of it. And I remember looking in the back of a Fangoria magazine before the website, thinking, oh, maybe I could write for Fangoria one day. And then I saw, like, send your journalism degree and this and that. I was like, well, I'm never going to school for journalism, so that's never going to happen. And I just kind of gave it up. And years down the line, you were very supportive of my writing and things I did. And just a couple of years in Icons of Fright, you gave me a shot. You had asked me to write something for you, and it was really a dream come true because I had written it off and thought it wasn't possible. And it was. I got to write for Fangoria thanks to this gentleman right here. So thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All of it, yeah.
But going back to the conventions where you said I was nice to you,
yes.
I hate to reveal this, but your dad used to give me $5 behind the stage.
That's why. Oh, okay. So you were bribed to be there.
No, just kidding.
No, but but again, it's funny because I've been to other conventions, the more modern ones, because to me, Fangoria Weekend of Horrors was kind of the definitive horror one. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There probably were there like Famous Monsters ones?
There was a couple other ones going on at the same time, but we definitely kind of cornered the market, I'll say, because we hit like all the major cities. It became like a nationwide thing.
Right. There were 2 Famous Monsters conventions in the 70s. But we were the only horror convention at the time for a couple of decades, and then the imitators came along, the Chillers and Monster Manias and et cetera, et cetera. But for years, we were the only game in town. There might have been a few small ones here and there, but nothing on the national level that we were doing them at. We kind of set the mold.
Mm-hmm. And there was a convention, maybe, I'm not going to name it, but maybe it was in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, where I went up to the promoter and did what I did with the Fango shows and thanked him very much for the weekend. And he could not have been more rude or arrogant about the whole thing.
Oh, no.
And I'm just like, holy shit. Like,
wow.
I gave you my $30 to get in this weekend, thanking you for a good job. And it's kind of like, yeah, I know. So that always, again, I don't care, what Fangoria has meant something to me for a lot of reasons, and that was one of them. That's an example, even the shows. So thank you.
And you also got to host a panel at a few conventions, and so did Bekah.
Yeah, gave me my first panel to host, which was fantastic. Joe Lynch, Wrong Turn 2. That was my first.
Oh, really?
My first panel, Tony knew I was like a huge Italian horror fan, and this was my very first year working at Fango, so I was like totally green. I was still just an intern, but they knew I was a big Italian horror fan, so it was like we had the guy who did the special effects on Cemetery Man. Diodato was there.
Lamberto Bava.
And
Lamberto
Bava.
Sergio Stivoletti.
That's it. There. And so it was all these guys, and they were supposed to get me a translator because none of these guys spoke Italian. And I'm up there on the stage, and we're waving at everybody, and then they're like, we don't know where the translator is. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And so I jokingly was like, anybody in the audience know Italian? And this guy raises his hand, and this guy from the audience came up and was our translator for the entire thing. But I was up there
Rebekah for this appearance.
I was not, thank God.
Sure.
No, that was about 2 years in. That was the Scott Senna years that came out. So, yeah. So
dark years. The dark ages.
I actually went back and revisited the interview that I did with you now, going back 12, 13 years or whatever. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the beginning for you, because you had... back then, you had told me that you were the way that you started writing was you were contributing to fanzines or doing your own fanzines, maybe.
Right. In high school, I put together a fanzine called Fantazine. Fantazine, yes. It was for the science fiction high school fan club that we had at the time, and so we had a little fanzine, and I interviewed Tom Savini for that. That was my first. Celebrity interview was Tom Savini. And then I started sending query letters out to Famous Monsters, Fangoria, Starlog. There were other knockoff magazines during that era. Monsterland was one.
Monster Times, wasn't that one as well?
Oh, that was
a little earlier.
Yeah, that was during the Famous Monsters era in the early 70s. And another magazine called Enterprise Incidents and Sci-Fi Movie World. So I was writing for all these magazines while I was still in college. High school. While I was in high school, I was also querying Famous Monsters, and Forrest Ackerman sent me letters of encouragement. We were friends since I first met him in 1974 at the first Famous Monsters convention. He was always there for me, like like you say, I was there for you.
Yeah.
He was always, giving me a pat on the back, helped me sell my first article, stuff like that. So, and then during college, and I was really getting published in a lot of places, including Starlog. Never could crack Fangoria back then, because Fangoria had this unusual setup where there were two co-editors at the time, and they wrote the whole magazine themselves. The two guys would split the articles, and once in a while they'd farm out an article to someone on the West Coast, like Abby Bernstein. But pretty much they did it all themselves. So there was no room for, another kid from New York who wanted to break in. So then one of the co-editors left to go work on another of the company's publications, Bob Martin. And that was the week I started. I was hired as an editorial assistant to Starlog, and I was also supposed to be working on teen magazines and wrestling magazines. Fangoria wasn't even mentioned when I got the job.
Right.
But then Bob quit, and Dave Everett was all alone. He was the other co-editor. He had nobody to help him do the magazine, and you're it. And
so it was like a right place, right time.
Right place at the right time, and I just fell into my dream job. And like, what do I do next?
Around what time of what issue of Fangoria was this? Was this still pretty early on?
Yeah, there was the first issue I worked on was 49, issue number 49, with Return of the Living Dead on the cover.
Wow.
So would that have been like 82, 83?
No, that was 85.
Oh, 85. So you were from 85 to 2000. When were you in charge of the magazine and editor?
Well, it was a month into when I was editorial assistant. The co-editor, Dave Everett, then decided he was going to move on.
Wow.
And I was too green to take over the magazine.
Yeah.
I was only there like a month, even though Dave promoted me from editorial assistant to assistant editor to associate editor to managing editor, all within like 6 weeks.
A promotion a month.
Yeah,
That's
it was
pretty good.
weird. It was wild,
Yeah.
We really hit it off. He was a really good guy, Dave. He was a great teacher. So he decided to leave, and they needed someone really quick. So Dave McDonald, who was editing Starlog at the time and who'd also bought some of my articles for Starlog, he decided, well, Tony, let's wait for him to get his wings. I'll be interim editor for a year till he learns his stuff and guide him and stuff, get him up and running. And that's what happened. He was the editor for like a year or so. And then
you were groomed for it.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, that could never happen.
Editor, let's see, Evil Dead 2 was on the cover.
Yeah.
So it was like 86, 87.
Wow.
So it was really
and that's a long run in magazines.
Yeah.
You went from like 2000, right? Was it 2000?
It was
it was like
job.
2009. It was...
let's say it was about 6 years ago.
Okay,
so,
like Chris.
2000.
No.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, no, what am I saying? It was a bit like Becca said, about 2009 maybe.
Yeah.
I kind of lost track of the years. But it was about 6 years, something like 6 years.
Yeah.
But people said, "Why didn't you leave?" And I have to say, why would I want to leave? I used to, I used to like when the alarm went off in the morning and going to work. It was great. It was the dream job. This is what I always wanted to do when I was taking the train to go to school. Like, what do you want to do with yourself? And I'd be on the train reading Fangoria and said, "Oh, I'd love to work for a magazine like this." I never dreamed it would happen. I never thought the stars would shine upon me like they did. But it was a great experience. It was great editing the magazine. It was great all the stuff that came to me being at the magazine, working on the Fango movies and our DVD stuff and video stuff, Fangoria books, and going to film festivals. It was always these great opportunities that would come in through the door, and it was just super cool. It was.
I kind of wanted to ask about that era when you first started, because you said it was about 1985.
Yep.
And to me, it's like, there's a dozen horror classics we can mention that came out in 1985, Return of the Living Dead being one of them and all that.
Yes.
So just as a fan, you're now projected, to be an editor on this magazine that you grew up loving. And what were those times like? Like, was it exciting seeing all this stuff happening like in horror at the moment? Because I felt like the mid 80s was kind of a high point. I mean, I know people said that the slasher boom happened and then it kind of died fast, but then by 84 when like Nightmare on Elm Street happened, I mean, I remember the mid 80s as a little kid going to the video store being a very fertile time for
that was the
horror.
best
There were
for
so
us.
many
Yes.
amazing, fantastical types of movies. So what was it like on your end?
It was so exciting during that period. The first screening I went to when I started at Fangoria was Reanimator. And after that, Fright Night, and one after the other. It was such a thrilling time. Within a few months, I started there. Clive Barker came to the office to visit. Johnny Ramone used to come up to the office and hang out. It was just such an amazing time.
I have his old horror VHS tapes.
I know, I remember.
I won like a couple of his horror VHS tapes at an auction. So.
We had Robert Englund showed up in the office in makeup for Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Wow.
It was just such a wild time. It was such an exciting time. It was such a fun time, you know. And at the same time, we were doing conventions, and I got to meet all my horror heroes: Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, Anthony Perkins. It was like it was an embarrassment of riches. It was just such an exciting time, and you know. Then the slashers came back. You know, you had Chainsaw was revived during the late '80s, and Chucky and Freddy. It was like it was just there was always something going on. There was always some fun thing to cover, some fun place to be.
Right.
It was great.
Well, let me ask you this, because you know, obviously you've seen over the years the different, you know, rising and falling of different trends in horror and how it all works out. But what was the craziest time that you can remember in your time kind of editing the magazine? Because from my memory, I would think it'd be maybe like the late 80s, because that's the point where Fangoria wasn't enough. Now there was Gore Zone that you guys were doing too, and then Toxic Shock. And like, there were just, I felt like by the end of the 80s, there was so much horror that maybe it was a little bit kind of, you know, eating itself, you know, kind of like competition with each other. Was that kind of the peak of horror in your experience? Well,
perhaps, probably, because when I first started with issue 49 of Fangoria, the magazine was kind of on it was at a point where it might have been canceled. You know, the sales are kind of lagging a little bit. You know, the two editors, Bob and Dave, didn't get along. Actually, they hated each other. Gosh. So there was some internal strife in the office back then. And then Nightmare on Elm Street happened. And when we put Nightmare on Elm Street 2 on the cover, that was issue number 49 and 50. We did 2 issues in a row. The sales went through the roof. You know, Freddy became this cultural sensation. Every year, a new Nightmare on Elm Street movie came out. We put him on the cover, and the sales were crazy. Really went crazy. We had this big spike, and we really rode that. And then all the slashers started coming back. They started churning out more Friday the 13th movies. Freddy got his own TV show. The Chucky movies were getting really popular again. You know, as I mentioned, Texas Chainsaw, the Leatherface came out around that period, and the mainstream started embracing all these characters. You know, Freddy became a household name, a mainstream phenomena, and Fangoria was so popular. We did all those spin-off magazines, because our publisher, the great Norman Jacobs, said, I'm going to create my own competition, because he used to publish like 10 different wrestling magazines just to, you know, flood the marketplace, and so nobody bought the other ones. They just by default,
like the ammunition magazines, those ones always boggled my mind. He would do these like military journals, but he would create his own competition. So like when I'm looking through our closet when I first started there, I'm like, why did we publish like 5 different military journals? And that's why, like, and we did some African American beauty magazines. And he was a trip.
Wow. Wow.
So that's why Gore Zone came along. Fangoria Horror Spectacular, Bloody Best of Fangoria Poster Magazine.
It was
Gore
a comic
Zone,
one too.
Toxic Horror. Well, there was Comic Scene.
Comic Scene.
Yeah,
Comic Scene,
really wasn't.
That was like a Starlog spinoff.
That was like a Starlog spinoff. Yeah.
And except for Toxic Horror, I was editing all those magazines. It was a huge amount, gargantuan workload, but it was all good stuff. It was all fun. The work didn't bother me. I mean, I wasn't working till 10 o'clock at night. And, you know, it was just, we were just churning the stuff out. But I was glad when it was just Fangoria, because then we could just concentrate on making one great magazine and not have to spread ourselves so thin. But it was a really fun period. And Norman's strategy worked, because when Fangoria circulation started going through the roof, during the Nightmare on Elm Street era, 2 ripoff magazines did come out. One was called Horror Fan, and the other was called Slaughterhouse. And they died after 1 issue apiece, because they couldn't compete with all these other Norman
titles. Yeah,
Jacobs Publications. They couldn't find a spot on the newsstand because we glutted the marketplace. And even though we had a lot of content out there, I think it was still quality stuff. We had we had Skip Inspector writing for Gore Zone. We had really a lot of cool things going on.
Yeah. And what about like the early 90s? Like when did that kind of die down a little bit and the focus shift back to Fangoria? Because I feel like the early 90s was a dark time for, so they say. I mean, there's still, you look back at it now in retrospect, and it's like, we talked about it on the show. You see something like Candyman, and it's like, well, that was what, early 92 or so?
Yeah.
92.
I mean, there were little like high points in horror then, and I mean, there was still horror coming out because I was still watching everything that came to the video store, but I don't recall the same saturation that we were seeing in the late 80s.
No, and what we're seeing today. There was a period, like 90, 89, maybe 90, 91, 92, where it was a real dry spell. And, I used to like pull my hair out trying to figure out what to put on the cover. So we'd have to do like a Tales from the Crypt cover or Batman Returns or Terminator 2. We'd do these kind of covers just to sell magazines.
Now was that, do you think, I mean, it's funny how the MPAA has changed over the years, but I mean, they were really after movies in the late 80s, like really. So I wonder, like, was that part of what kind of killed horror in the early 90s, the fact that nobody could get past the MPAA with
Could be,
movies?
so many of those films were diluted because of the MPAA, one after, they were always going after, Wes's movies and Brian De Palma's films. It was always these big bloodbaths in the press between the filmmakers and the MPAA. And actually there was a time where the MPAA was actually pressuring the studios not to give Fangoria like bloody images and stuff. They said, because they used to have an arrangement where photos had to be approved. They had to have an MPAA approval, on the stuff that was released at the time. Wow. That was more for press kits and stuff. But some studio publicists were so scared of the MPAA, they started freezing us out after a while, and they would hold back from giving us really gruesome photos, which of course were the bread and butter of Fangoria, with the really gory pictures. Yeah. So there were really challenging times. But then Scream came along, and that reignited the whole slasher boom. And
do you remember the experience of watching that film for the first time? Yeah,
I was in the theater. It was a rough cut. It was it wasn't the final version. It had a temp score, and sitting there, I realized, wow, this is a game changer. This is something different. This is gonna be the first $100 million grossing horror film. I said that to some friends, and they said, "Yeah, right, sure." And sure enough, Scream made $104 million, and just changed everything. And then, during my last decade of Fangoria, where in the past during those dark days, I used to have to pull teeth to find a really good image to put on the cover. And if you were lucky, if the major studios put out 3 or 4 major horror films a year. There came a time where now 4 or 5 major horror films were competing for the cover of Fangoria. It was an embarrassment of riches. There was so much to choose from to put on the cover. It made things so much easier. There was so much content to squeeze into the magazine now, and there's so much stuff to sell. It was great.
Did you ever come across horror films that you just personally didn't feel necessarily comfortable promoting, or were you always open to everything? I'm thinking once we went into the torture porn period of the late 90s, early 2000s. I'm always curious how you guys felt, because you've seen all these different waves of horror, and obviously some are going to be more your thing, but it's going to be popular. Cabin in the Woods or something. No, Cabin in the Woods. Hostel. It's going to be popular. But how did you feel personally about those films?
I had no objection. I always, as editor, I always try to be all inclusive. Horror has this. It's such a wide category. There's so many different niches within horror that I always felt I have to satisfy everyone. I have to give everybody their due. I'll have stuff for the Godzilla fans. I'll have stuff for the slasher fans, the Euro horror fans. I want to have something for everyone. So that was always sort of my editorial mantra. I want to make everybody happy, and I don't want to be dismissive of something that even if I dislike, I'm not going to spoil it for someone who does like it. So but I really didn't come across too much. Maybe the really low rent stuff I might have, we'll put that in Gore Zone. But generally, I try to include everybody. I want everybody to have a seat at the table with the horror fans. So
that's good.
I didn't try to exclude any particular subgenre.
It's a good precedent to set, and it's something that I have tried myself to, like, even if I don't like with the show, it's like, even if we don't like something, we know that somebody listening is going to like it, and we should talk about it and recommend it.
And we've definitely carried that onto the Blumhouse site too. Yeah. Just because we don't like it doesn't mean that it's not someone else's favorite film. Right. And we try to keep that going.
Do you remember when the internet first started? Do you remember your first... I'm like curious, running a magazine for that long, and the first time the internet emerges, besides email and basic chat functions, which is all we saw for a while. But once the first kind of blog started, and maybe the first horror sites, I don't know the history of horror sites. Who was the first kind of in the space?
I remember message boards being
message boards.
Yeah, that was very important.
The message board.
Yeah, it's funny. The guy I hired to run the Fangoria message boards. I don't know if you knew this. Was a fella named Steve Barton,
who now runs
who literally lived around the corner from me in Marine Park, Brooklyn.
Wow.
Uncle Creepy.
Uncle Creepy.
Yeah. So, like, when you first saw those, did you think, did you get that that's going to probably be the future of where everything headed? Or at that point, was it still so early that you're like, no, magazines are still...
I think it was too early. Yeah. I always, at that time, I thought, this is a great way to promote the magazine.
Right.
That's the way we always looked at the internet and our website. And Troma was the company that actually designed the first Fangoria website, because they were trying to create this Troma-verse, and they were building websites for various people, and they came to Fangoria and said, "We'll build you a website," and they did, and they were what got us started. They didn't have anything to do with it editorial wise, but we were part of their network.
At what point did it start? Like, what point can you tell that it's cutting into business? Like, was there was it like late 2000s where you start to see that it's also competition rather than just...
Yeah, I never really saw it that way. I always thought the website was a great way to generate publicity for the magazine and sales and advertising, subscriptions. We always try to, cross promote between the two, do stuff in the magazine that the website wasn't doing, and vice versa. It was only really within maybe the last 6 or 7 years where the internet affected the editorial of Fangoria. It was more after I left, because the new editor, Chris Alexander, realized that people don't buy Fangoria to read the Terra Teletype anymore to get the latest news. They get that on the internet. So we have to go retro and cover more of the older stuff and revisit that instead of covering the new stuff as much, because they could read it for free on all the horror websites. So the whole philosophy of the magazine changed within about 6 years ago. But it was a wise decision, because the magazine's still selling well, and it didn't really hurt in that sense. And now there's more, even with the internet, there's so many different horror magazines out there now. It's hard, I can't believe it, and I don't know who's buying them and how many copies they're selling, but there's a shelf at every Barnes and Noble loaded with horror magazines.
Yeah, there's always at least 4 anytime, 4 different magazines anytime. Yeah, it's kind of remarkable.
Yeah,
I don't know anything about like how you became a horror fan. So that's where I'm most interested. Like, because we always talk about people who are horror kids when they got infected. Were you somebody whose parents introduced you to things, or did you kind of secretly discover it late night one night?
Sort of by default. I was a lucky kid in that my parents never took me to Disney movies or G-rated films. They dropped me and my friends off maybe at a theater, or they'd take us I used to go to drive-ins a lot as a kid, and my folks took me to see movies like Scream and Scream Again, Dracula's Risen from the Grave, Frogs, all these AIP horror movies, Hammer films, Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. So that's where I kind of had a grew a taste for horror stuff. And I read famous monsters of filmland as a kid. I also read comic books and science fiction and stuff like that. And I used to watch Chiller Theater with my dad. But he liked all kinds of movies. I think I had the interest somehow ingrained in me. It wasn't necessarily my folks they weren't fans or anything like that. It's just somehow I was drawn to Dracula and Godzilla and that kind of stuff as a young kid.
So classic monsters.
Yeah,
were a big part of it.
I started with that. I started, as a really young kid watching Godzilla movies, and I graduated to the Universals, then the Hammers and the AIP movies.
We were talking about this before you came on, but Cushing or Lee? If you have to, were you more of a Cushing or a Lee guy?
Oh, I love both of them. I love both
Can't
of those
you
guys.
look at the diplomatic editor?
I go Cushing.
Yeah. They were such class acts, you know.
Yeah.
I never met Cushing. He sent me an autographed picture as a kid. Christopher Lee I met several times, and it was just so great to be in his presence. He was amazing.
And I could throw Price into that because he kind of trumps all.
Yes. I think I was probably Vincent Price. He was probably my first horror hero. Was Vincent Price.
I'd probably pick him over Cushing.
How did you meet Price for the first time?
We had him as a guest at our Fangoria Weekend of Horrors in 1990 out here, and it was in May of that year, and it was the same month of his birthday. So I thought it would be really cool to contact all his friends in the business to send birthday greetings.
Oh, cool!
And they did. Yeah, Bob Hope, Robert Mitchum, Gene Tierney, all this Hollywood royalty. Because Vincent Price was really much loved by all the old Hollywood people. Charlton Heston and all these people sent these wonderful birthday cards and messages, and I got to read them to him sitting on the stage. It was wonderful. I felt like I was giving something back to him because it was a surprise. And the audience sang "Happy Birthday" to him.
That's so cool.
And a lot of his friends were there. Roger Corman came down. Joe Dante, he helped moderate the Q&A. It was a really fun night. That was like 2 years before he had passed. And so he was a little frail, and it was kind of like your grandfather talking to your grandfather backstage, about the old days. And he was great. It was a dream come true.
It's a pretty cool grandfather.
Yeah.
Great.
Can we delve a little bit, since we mentioned the Vincent Price story, delve a little bit into the convention thing, because that was always, at least for me growing up, it went hand in hand with the magazine, being able to go to the Weekend of Horrors. So when did Weekend of Horrors start? Like when was that?
Let's see, that was I think 84 was the first one in New York City. I went as a fan. That was Bob Martin was there, like Michael Berryman was there, Caroline Monroe. So I got to meet all those people, and then it really took off. Probably our first LA show at the Ambassador Hotel, where Robert Kennedy was assassinated, and that was in 1985. And then we were like really off and running, because then the Nightmare on Elm Street movie started, and we had all these amazing guests that we could just pluck from the film world. So that's when they started gathering steam in the late 80s and the 90s. And like I said, we were the only game in town. We could do a New York show and an LA show, and that people look forward to those all year round, and there were huge crowds. And celebrities didn't charge for autographs in those days.
Good old days.
We'd do these great panels, and we'd have screenings, and we did a screening of Gremlins 2, the new bunch, in San Jose, California during our convention, and we had Gremlins get loose in the projection booth, and we did all kinds of fun stuff like that. It was a really great time.
Yeah, there's very specific memories I have, and I used to have one of those giant old clunky VHS recorders, so I'd try to record certain stuff, but like I remember things like I think Bruce Campbell and Sam showing up in New York to show the first footage from Evil Dead 3, which was actually Army of Darkness, and it was like him fighting the little hymns, and like I still distinctly remember the entire audience just losing their minds. Like imagine that's the first scene that you're seeing from a new Evil Dead movie is him fighting a bunch of little hymns.
That's pretty funny.
So and then the costume contest, I thought that was always a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, some of the guests over the years, I was wondering if you could talk about some of your heroes, some of the people that you got to be a part of the convention, because I remember when, I guess, I don't know, maybe mid 2000s when it became big again here in Burbank. you could call on Wes Craven to show up. Even if you didn't have a movie, you can call him Bruce Campbell and he would be here for a Fango show. So who were some of those relationships that, I don't know, maybe surprised you, or people that were always supportive of Fango?
Wes Craven, he was great. He was wonderful. I remember the weekend he was supposed to show up. He forgot he was supposed to be there on a Saturday, and I call up, Wes, where are you? It says, well, I'm supposed to be there on Sunday, right? No, it's Saturday. So he couldn't make it for that Saturday. So he wound up coming the next day, even though we didn't have room for him on the schedule. We squeezed him into the program. I used to love Bruce Campbell. Was always one of my favorite guests, because in the early days before he became the Bruce Campbell of today, he would do pratfalls on the stage. Yes. He'd fall on his face and do all this crazy stuff. And then we had people like Angus Scrimm who recite poetry, do the Raven, or on stage. And let's see, Robert Englund was always a trip. He was always a good guest. William Friedkin was a lot of fun when we had stage. He was a little serious. Rob Zombie, a little serious, yeah.
Great speaker. He knew how to talk. Friedkin knows how to talk.
He sure does. And we had Linda Blair present him with a Lifetime Achievement Award at that convention. It was a surprise. I remember when House of a Thousand Corpses was coming out, when Universal had the movie, Rob Zombie wanted to be there, and he brought the whole cast in costume. I think that was the first time we ever did anything like that. So we had Karen Black and Sid Haig and Bill Moseley all dressed as their characters, which was really well, because a lot of actors don't like doing that. Now they don't, now they get paid so big bucks to sign autograph or do photo ops in character. But back then, they didn't want to be caught dead in character. They wanted to be themselves. But Rob got them to all appear in costume. But generally, nobody ever turned me down for a convention appearance. It was just me going into my Rolodex, planning the show a year in advance most of the time. And I'm trying to think if anyone ever. At one point, and I eventually got him, but I was out here. I was on the set of Memoirs of an Invisible Man, and John Carpenter was always someone I wanted at a convention. So I asked him, I said, "Oh, Mr. Carpenter, I'd love to get you at a Fangoria convention. That's the holy grail of guests for me." He goes, "I wouldn't be caught dead at a horror convention."
Oh, wow.
That sounds like him about this podcast.
Yeah.
But then, a few years later, then, I tried again. Vampires was coming out, Ghosts of Mars. He did all those conventions. He wasn't the happiest of campers, but he did them. And he signed, he'd sign for everybody. But now he gets big bucks to show up occasionally. Maybe he'll do one convention a year, but he gets paid a lot of money to do it. Back then, we weren't paying him anything.
He does.
You're doing it for the fans.
He's doing it for the fans. And now he's got a TV with the Lakers game on it, where he barely pays attention to you while he signs your thing. He's just watching the game.
He was playing a video game on, it wasn't even his phone. It was like a little handheld video game at the one I saw him at. And I was like,
he's still a genius. He can get away with it, I guess.
Yeah.
And his music's great. Now he's doing this music thing. It's kind of cool to see him doing it.
He's got the comic going. I mean, he's still doing
Yeah, he's still doing good stuff.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first panel that you moderated? Because, I just remember you moderating panels, so there's always that
the first
nervousness. I knew Joe Lynch a little bit, so that's why I was like, all right, I think I can handle this. Joe and I are friends. I know a lot about his movie. That was a good way to break me in, but
it took me maybe 20 years before I really felt comfortable on stage. No, really. I remember the first time I was on stage, it was, I think, at a New York convention, and I was supposed to say the word Thanksgiving, and I said, "Thanksgive me." I remember that. And I used to mangle people's names every so often.
Right.
I called Adam Green Adam Simon.
Right.
And he got insulted, Even I knew he was Adam Green, but for some reason Adam Simon popped into my head.
We've had both on the show.
Yeah, both have been here.
We've had both on the show.
And they have a show here too.
Yes,
that's right. Yeah. So every so often I might trip up, but it took me a long time to really get comfortable.
How do you feel about that shift in the convention culture? Because we've had Sean Clark on here before, who reps a lot of people, and talking about that shift to where big prices are charged for autographs, big prices for photos. Was that hard for you to swallow, given how you'd had this fun run where everything was free?
It was, yeah. Well, for many years, when that started to creep into the conventions where the celebrities wanted to charge for autographs, I used to be right up front with them. I said, "You can't charge for autographs. I don't want to have that at my shows, blah, blah. And most of them went along with it.
Yeah.
Eventually, we had to go with the flow. And it was really eBay that kind of ruined it for, for the fans and the sports memorabilia shows. Chiller Theater in New Jersey, where, they turned it into this big flea market of has-beens who would come in and sign for $25 an hour. You have celebrities like Shatner charges $100 for an autograph, which is insane. And some hard people are charging, I think, $60 for an autograph.
Yeah, so Rutger Hauer was at 80, but it was like a one-off, and he was signing for a charity. But still, it's like, I'm not going to...
Still a lot of money.
What was Norman Reedus at when we were in Texas? He was super high.
I don't remember. It was pretty, yeah. I mean, and
it was pricey.
I understand it, but I miss the days of old.
It's really depressing. I find it really depressing, but I think part of it is the fans also... Some fans ruined it in the sense that, they'd have the celebrity sign 5 things, and then 4 of those would go on eBay the next day.
Yeah.
They really exploited the situation. And then there's also a lot of these promoter sharks out there. I don't want to name names who, put these big dollar signs in the heads of a lot of these celebrities. I think Romero was probably the first celebrity signer who was getting the big bucks, and he generally didn't do conventions. The first convention George Romero did for me, I offered to pay him a fee, and he didn't want a fee. No, I just want to go. I just want to be there. I just want to meet the fans. We didn't have to pay him a fee or anything.
That's cool.
And he signed for hours for free for the fans. But then these promoters get their meat hooks into some of these people, and they should tell them how much they could be making, and I think it's pretty disgusting, actually. I think the celebrities should be giving something back to the fans. I mean, they're already buying their movies and going to see them in the theater, and do something for the fans.
Do they get paid a fee anyway to show up often?
Now they do.
Now they do.
Yeah, I think
so
they
regardless.
But some of they get a fee, and then they also get a guarantee that they'll make X amount of dollars signing photos. It's really turned into big business, and it's just not as much fun. I miss the conventions in a lot of ways, but in other ways, I couldn't see myself doing them the way they are today.
Yeah.
By the time that I came into Fangoria, well, I mean, I'd been there for a while, but by the first convention that I helped do the booking on was the Las Vegas one. And I remember we would get riders from celebrities about them having specific pens that we would have to have at their tables, or specific hotels because they didn't want to be in a specific hotel in the area, or fruit that we would have to have for them at their table. And I was just shocked because I had always thought it was just like, don't they just want to be here?
And that's the way it used to be. Yeah.
They used to back in the day, yeah.
Through doing all these different things like conventions, and then through editing, you got to see kind of a taste of what other parts of the industry were. What, when you were wrapping up being editor, what other kind of things did you feel like you were driven to want to try or experience in that world? Was it more in the film distribution model? Because I know you've done elements of that, but did you see other people doing jobs during your time going, oh, that'd be cool. I would love to try that out, because it seems like a great place to see how everything works.
Yeah, I always, when we started our VHS label back in 1999, maybe 2000. That was something I always had fun, getting into acquisitions, watching these movies, making deals with these people. So that was, once I got a taste of that, I thought this was really where I wanted, segue into, let's find someone else to edit the magazine, and I'll move into distribution, getting the Fangoria label on DVDs and, TV shows, radio shows, whatever, that I saw that as a natural progression. And we did do that. We had like 5 different labels over the years. We had an international label, a classics label. We tried all these different things, and the DVD market was very good to us. And then we started doing VOD with a company out here called Brainstorm Media, and so that always seemed like a natural, a tributary for me to explore.
Because you told us just before the show that you were out here also doing stuff for film festivals. And so that's obviously the first point of contact with new movies.
Yes.
Is that something you had done previously before? I mean, I know you did it last year, but have you been doing that for years? Or?
Well, let's see. And one of the cool things when I was editor at Fangoria was I was always getting invited to be on juries at international film festivals in Italy and England, Spain, all over the world. And I love going to film festivals. It's a great time. So in 1998, I got invited to the Fantasia Film Festival in Montreal, and I'd also helped them a little behind the scenes to book some films. And that summer, the president of the festival, Pierre Corbet, said, "Hey, I'd like you to work on the festival, be a co-director of international programming." And I said, "Sure, I'm there." And so I've been doing that for the last 18 years.
Oh, wow.
19 years. This 2016. It'll be Fantasia's 20th anniversary, and I've been there for 19 of those 20 years.
Wow.
And we're excited to be hosting the live podcast from the 20th anniversary that you're going to organize with a live on-air commitment. No pressure.
We are talking about it.
It would be pretty amazing. No, I think you had Andrei Zulawski there last year, and for me, I've never met him.
Elric would have lost his shit.
Even Sam Zimmerman can't claim to be as big a Possession fan as I am.
He likes a movie called Possession, apparently.
I am Zulawski on Facebook. I run his little page.
He really does. I like Zulawski.
So when I saw that you guys had him, I was just like, I never wanted to be somewhere more than I wanted to be there. And he has a new film this year, a new film called Cosmos that's just out now. So first film in 15 years. Wow. But so Montreal that festival always kind of appealed to me. I'm curious, because people who've been horror fans as long as you have, especially ones who fell in love with monster movies, which are so different than what we do now, but for the most part, like horror is like you said, it's a broad term. And now we've moved in, it seems like right now we're either supernatural ghost stories, found footage films, or kind of slow burn drama that ends with a lot of horror, which I really like those movies.
Me too.
But yeah, so I was curious, what are some of the trends now that you are really into that have kept your interest in this thing that we call horror?
I've always liked those slow burn horror movies, like you said.
Ty West's films, people like that.
Yeah, exactly. I like those. I'm not a big found footage fan. Yeah. I acquired some of those for the Fango label, but I just never had a big taste for them.
Yeah.
I like supernatural horror. I love satanic horror. Though I'm tired of Exorcist ripoffs.
Right.
I can't believe all
Possession
these years
with priests. It's like, how many priests do you even see anymore? I never
I'm so
see
tired
priests.
of those kind of movies. Yeah. But I like movies like The Omen and The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby. Those are like some of my favorites. I always like those.
Oh, yeah.
The current stuff. I like stuff with story. Really, characters you care about.
Do you remember the last thing that kind of blew you away? In the theater, I'm just wondering theater stuff like recent years. Like I remember seeing Kill List in the theater and going, "Whoa, what was this movie?" Because I knew nothing about it.
That was more like a shock.
That was more just going what is it? Because I hadn't heard of it. I'm always just curious, because there's always hype. Like saying your next had a lot of. If I'd seen your next without the hype, it would have been a little different. Yeah, it would be nice to see that film blind rather than having heard about it for so long.
Oh, gee.
You're not put on the spot or anything. Yeah. You can come back to it.
Yeah,
let me think about that.
So throughout all of history, what's been your niche? Everyone who worked at Fango, we all had an area of expertise that we were like, oh yeah, I love all horror films.
Bekah's non-exploitation.
Not exploitation in general. The 70s are mine. But yeah, what was your area of expertise?
That's a good question.
We're just stumping.
It's called Stump the Tony.
Well, I had the most fun with the horror slasher guys, the Freddys, the Jasons, the Michaels, because that was, during that 80s period, it was just such a fun time.
Do you think it's possible to have a character like that again?
Yeah, we've had this discussion.
Because the Babadook seems like a character. Right. I look at the Babadook, had that been an American film by an American studio, it's possible they would have franchised it and kept going with it. But have you seen anything with that kind of potential in the last couple decades?
The Babadook is that's a great example.
Yeah. The first one doesn't feel like a franchise film. I can't be like the
Babadook
2. Yeah,
but
exactly.
Then Freddy didn't really on his own. The first one, I mean, he did feel like he goes in with a bit of the humor, but it's not really till the second film that those things feel like franchises. The first time they're just scary.
Well, Wes wasn't even thinking franchise. He actually sold gave away the sequel rights to New Line, which was a cause of great consternation and regret.
Is the Babadook a film you responded to?
I love that. Oh yeah, I love the Babadook. Yeah. I liked a film called Hellions by Bruce McDonald.
I've been wanting to see that. That's a new film, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, here's a trend that I've been getting off on is these Irish horror movies.
Yeah, The Canal.
The Hollow, The Canal.
Citadel.
Yeah. There's really some interesting stuff.
Somebody told us about The Hollow. That's about to come out. I've heard that was good.
That was really, really good. Hellions is, well, that's not Irish.
Canadian, yeah.
That was,
Bruce McDonald.
Bruce McDonald.
Pontypool director.
Yeah, I like that guy. I thought that was a really
He's
smart
good. Yeah,
film.
I haven't seen that one. I'm excited.
It's good. It's like a traditional Halloween horror movie.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think it's on VOD now.
Have you seen anything at AFM this round that you're just like, holy shit, people need to check this out?
Today was my first day, so I saw 4 movies. I was supposed to see Rob Zombie's latest film, 31, today, but there was a mad dash for exhibitors, and I got closed out, which was a bummer. But I saw 4 movies. 2 were action movies for Fantasia, but I saw 2 really good suspense thrillers, both from Britain. One was called A Patch of Fog, which was about Stephen Graham from, he's the guy who played Al Capone on Boardwalk Empire.
Little guy,
yeah, he plays like this fan of this author and is kind of stalking him, but it goes in places where that you don't expect. Sort of blackmailing this guy, and there's a real battle of wills between these 2 characters. That was good. And the one I just came from was called The Ones Below, and it's with David Morrissey, the governor from from Walking Dead, and he plays this character. Him and his wife live downstairs from another couple upstairs, and both wives are pregnant, and then the David Morrissey's wife has a miscarriage that they blame on the people upstairs. So they set their sights on stealing the other baby.
Oh, wow.
And a little bit of inside.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Not as graphic as that.
Yeah, of course.
But it was when I saw the promo last year, I thought, this looks like it's like a hand that rocks the cradle kind of movie. But the film wound up being a lot smarter than that, and it goes to some pretty dark places that I wasn't expecting. So,
were you surprised when you saw the ratings of Walking Dead when it first emerged?
I was, I always thought zombies were, was this subgenre that, that had its followers, but I never thought it would become this big cultural phenomena. 15 million viewers per week.
It's pretty wild.
Astounding. And the show keeps getting better and better.
That's the thing I keep saying. I think I almost feel bad for people who turned it off after like season 2 or 3, because this last couple are just like, drama-wise, it's a really good show.
Yeah.
But it does take its time. It's time to kind of lay the foundation for what it is,
So what have been the big trends that you've seen at AFM this year? I know every year, I haven't gone this week yet, but every year that I've gone and passed, just walking around all of the exhibitors, you can be like, man, there's a lot of Krampus films this year. Man, last year, everything was a NATO. It was like Rock NATO and Snake NATO and everything like that. So what are the big trends that you're seeing this year? The year before, everything was Malcolm McDowell or Danny Trejo. They were the trend. So.
Well, I always try to avoid movies that star Eric Roberts.
That's a good call.
Let's see who else. William Baldwin. There's a few of them.
Eric Roberts is actually good. He's just in bad movies. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like
true.
He was a good actor.
I did
Let's go to the Dark Knight.
I know. He's got, and I've seen him like work with some people, and like when he's done some of the higher caliber films, he's good.
He's a good actor.
I did one set visit where he was on a movie and he had a girl off screen with like poster board, like holding up his lines. And
you never want to see that.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah, that's a bad sign.
And then I heard him talking to somebody and he was like, man, when you do like 7 movies a month, man, you can't memorize this many lines.
You got to do
true.
like 2 movies per kid you're paying alimony on. So you multiply 7 by 14. It's a lot of movies in a year. It's tough.
But as far as trends this year, I really haven't hit the suites yet. I've been mostly doing heavy screening. So, and the weird thing is, like today, when 31 got canceled, I wanted to go to the suites and start prowling the halls, but I can't go 5 feet into the lobby of the Lowe's where all the exhibitors meet without being, running into somebody and, getting caught up in a conversation. And, then you walk a few more feet and there's Ken Foray and another few feet. Oh, there's Rolf Konevsky and, latching on to me when,
We saw him on Sunday. He was at the 16 millimeter screening.
So it's kind of, so I didn't really get a flavor for the place today, but I will over the next few days. But in the past, like you said, it's always, there's the year of the found footage movies. There's a year where everything is zombie movies and slasher, scream knockoffs.
Last year, a couple of us journalists decided to play AFM bingo. And so when we all went on Monday, we made a list of 10 things that we know we would find there. And we had to text each other pictures of it. So like the first person to find a bad shark movie. And so you had to take a picture and text it to everybody. And like at the end, the person won
Drinking
like $25. It was a fun game.
Oh,
like
wow.
it made the day pass quickly because I was like, I have to find something that's got a knockoff of the Conjuring poster because you knew there was going to be one. And a tree with a face in it was another one. And a lot of films did that last year. So it was like, okay, we
Things
can do
with
that.
cats or whatever.
Do you predict
Talking Dogs? That was 2 years ago. Was the year of the Talking Dolls.
One of the trends that we often question whether it's going to have another revival, given it just needs another one of those landmark films, but is the slasher movie, because you've seen so many incarnations of that. It can mean different things to different periods, But do you think that's something that could still have legs given the right reinvention? I just don't know what it would be. Like everyone's always scratching their brain. I just don't know how you make this a popular format because it's so ritualistic and we're so used to it's almost a joke because we've seen so many Friday 13th films.
It's a formula and it's hard to reinvent the formula without completely breaking the formula and then you end up with something different.
I thought Final Girls would have done that. I love the movie. Maybe it was a little too charming in some ways, but I thought
that's what Rob thought.
No, it went too comedy. It was like it was like a balancing act.
I thought it was
didn't give it any real chance.
I thought it was adorable. Elric thought it was a little too comedic.
I loved the setup. I thought the setup was perfect. But again, that would never have like relaunched a slasher because it's like Cabin in the Woods. Yeah. It's kind of satirizing that thing, and a satire can never even Scream really. Like if people had been smart, they would have realized it wouldn't have been a long trend because Scream's actually criticizing in a way or satirizing.
But Scream did relaunch.
It did briefly,
right
but it was
that
like a brief.
Like,
I know what you did last summer spike, and then it kind of dies pretty hard.
I mean, we had like Valentine's Day and Urban Legend.
No, there was a ton, but they all came real quick, and then they die. You know, I don't know. I'm just curious if you think is there a subgenre you would like to see get another kind of wave? Like you're talking about satanic movies. That's something we see one of very
rarely.
Yeah, well, they're too busy trying to knock off The Exorcist every time.
Yeah.
So that one's really tough. I think that's really
Gets in the way.
bled dry. Unfortunately, the last big studio one, which was maybe. The one with Eric Bana from 2 summers ago.
Yeah, Deliver Us From Evil.
It was the same thing.
Just felt like it had nothing left to say.
So I think that's really played out and out on available on VOD now is the Exorcism of Molly Hartley, for example.
Same Emily Rose and
anytime there's an exorcism of some long man, I'm usually out immediately.
Like even monster movies. I'm curious if that could ever be a thing. I mean,
I'd like to see monster movies
cool.
again. Like the classic Universal, and they've tried a few times, but every time they drop the ball, and now they want to do the classic monsters as superheroes.
Which is just terrible.
And I know that just the studios across the board, just from being in pitch meetings and talking to all the agents and everything, studios will no longer buy creature features because it's a bigger budget. And the creature is always a hit or miss. Either it's going to be, oh my God, that looks amazing, or it's like Mama, where you're like, oh, this movie, oh, no, wait, that creature is
CG
bad.
nonsense,
And so, like the studios in general, just what we're seeing, like being purchased right now, creature features are not happening, and it's kind of sad.
That's because that's pretty much my favorite, But I also like the big monsters too. So I'm excited that there's going to be another Kong movie and another Godzilla movie, and then King Kong versus Godzilla. So that's I'm looking forward to all that stuff.
So what are you seeing at AFM this week that you're like really excited about? Like your favorite things that you're seeing?
Well, I can't wait to see the new Rob Zombie movie because I pretty much liked everything he's done, even his Halloween movies to a certain extent.
We were just having a discussion on that right before you came in. Where
I still don't get. I'm trying, but I still don't get Lords of Salem.
We both like it.
See, that's like my favorite of all of his films. I'm like, I can tolerate Devil's Rejects. I wasn't a huge fan of the Halloween films, but Lords of Salem, I'm there with.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this new movie 31 is a return to Devil's Rejects style horror for him, and that's going to be it. I was talking to his manager today, and he's saying, this is his last horror movie for a long time. He's doing.
He said that
He said that when he was going to do the wrestling movie.
Well, he wants to do a Groucho Marx movie next.
That I heard that's
optioned, and that's really where they're moving towards.
Wow,
next.
It's hard to imagine how he could have pulled that off.
I know, but I can't.
Given how big Groucho is.
It's going to be the most brutal Groucho Marx movie like ever.
Yeah. So these are the ones I'm really looking forward to. The Devil's Candy, which is by Sean Byrne, who did a movie I really, really liked a lot, The Loved Ones.
And that played at Fantastic Fest, I think.
Yes,
and got great reviews early on.
So I'm really psyched to see that. I can't wait to see the new Kevin Smith horror movie, Yoga Hosers.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I loved his last two horror movies. They don't have many fans, but I like Tusk, and the one he did before that was
Red State.
Red State.
I like both.
I thought Red State was well made. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought
Red
that was
State.
really good.
I haven't seen Tusk yet.
The preacher, whoever the
Michael
head-
Parks.
Yeah,
Michael
he
Parks,
was
yeah.
amazing in
He's
it.
so good.
The rest of the movie, I was kind of like, it's
I still have to see those. I haven't seen
Tusk
either.
I
of
haven't
those.
seen
enjoyed.
Tusk.
Tusk is, you should
It's an
check it
acquired
out. Yeah.
taste. I have to say, like, I know people who think it's amazing, and then I know people that are like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
And
Once again, Michael Parks is the best thing in the movie.
he's the greatest
and then
part.
Johnny Depp comes on, and the movie kind of goes south.
Yeah, he definitely adds this weird comedic element
Yeah.
that the movie didn't really need because you've already got a guy in a walrus suit, so you don't need Johnny Depp doing funny accents.
And now I think he's also in Yoga Hosers, so I'm a little nervous about that. There's a slasher one called Summer Camp from the Spanish company called Filmax, and they teamed up with the.
Has Jocelyn Donahue in it?
I'm not. No, I don't think so.
Is it by the guys who did one of the guys who did Rick or had something to do with Rick?
Yes, I think it's some of the same, not the same director, but some of the.
I have a
some
feeling
creative
Jocelyn.
team.
She was in a film called
maybe
The
she is
Frontier
in it.
that we're working on here, and she left to go do something with the Rick guys in Spain. She was going to go to Spain for like 8 weeks, and it sounded like the best job ever.
Wow.
And I think it was a summer camp. She played like a summer camp counselor.
Could be.
So it could
Yeah,
finally be
could
that movie. Very
and,
cool.
one of the producers of The Conjuring is
cool.
also on that one, so I'm looking forward to that. Let's see. A Turkish horror movie called Baskin that's been playing
Yep,
festivals.
it's playing at AFI. I
Yeah.
think I've got a ticket to that.
Yeah, I'm looking
I hear
forward
it's
to that.
nuts.
How did you get tickets ahead of time?
I just like buy them on the day, or I get them for free on the day.
Okay, see, that's
I'm like
all
a vampire of festivals. I'm ready when they launch. I'm there. I always wait till the minute they
I'm
launch.
never that
I know.
organized to like because you
I'm
have to
super
be
nerdy about
online
festivals.
in queue at noon.
Yeah,
and
that's
I'm
right.
like, I can't do that. I don't have that type of commitment.
I'm in the shadows waiting.
I'll wait till they come out.
Yeah, I'll just watch it on
Patience for
VOD.
this.
A couple of zombie movies I'll try to check out. One is called Attack of the Lederhosen Zombies.
Oh wow, weird.
And then there's Night of the Living Deb, which is
Deb.
by the guy who did Infestation, which I liked a lot.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, it was a big bug movie.
Okay, yeah, I remember
with
the
Ray
cover.
Wise.
Yeah,
Oh, I liked
That's a
Infestation.
fun movie. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
if you haven't seen it, check.
You know what I
I'm
want to
intrigued.
mention? I forgot to mention in our intro, and since you just mentioned zombies, there was somebody, I think it was on our Facebook page, because, we talk a lot about horror TV and, stuff that's going on now, but somebody actually asked us why we've never mentioned iZombie. And the simple answer is none of us have watched it.
Yeah, I was getting ready. I was like,
But no,
huh.
somebody was like, oh, you guys talk a lot about horror TV, but you never mention iZombie, and it's a good alternative to things like Walking Dead. It's like the complete 180 of it.
Yeah.
And literally, another friend of mine who knows I'm a big comic fan, because I guess it's based on a comic book, was like, why have you not watched iZombie? And so it's on Netflix Instant now.
Okay.
The first season. I watched the first episode, and I loved it. It's really quirky and fun and kind of crazy. Essentially, it's this girl that was she was working to become a doctor, and then she's got like the perfect life and a fiance and all this stuff, and then she decides one late night to go to some party. She gets pressured to go to a party. The party's on a boat where there's a zombie outbreak on the boat, and they kill everybody on the boat, and she kind of gets scratched and wakes up, and now she's a zombie. So she now becomes a morgue technician just so she gets access to brains. Like, she's trying to hide the fact
weird.
that she's a zombie now. And it's really cute and funny because what happens is when she eats the brains, she gets a little bit of that person's memory in flashes. So in the first episode, they're trying to, like, a detective is trying to solve the murder of this corpse. And she kind of helps because she sees this girl's memories and stuff. So it's really fun, quirky, and like, and that's it. Like, she's the zombie, but they kind of drop all the other zombie stuff. It's like nobody acknowledges that it was a zombie apocalypse, like a breakout on the boat. They're just like, oh, they all took some drugs and went crazy and like started eating each other or whatever.
That's cool.
So yeah, I only watched the first episode, but it was really, really fun. And I was like, oh, this is kind of neat. So
Quantum Leap with zombies. That's what it sounds like.
What station
There's the
was it
elevator
on,
pitch.
or is it international?
Sci-fi?
No,
I
it's
think it's
not.
sci-fi.
Maybe it's sci-fi. I don't know.
No,
I've seen it
it's
advertised. I just-
CW.
Oh, CW. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
It has that CW feel.
That's actually a good transition because I'm curious because horror TV is going bonkers.
Yeah, I mean, can you believe that?
I mean, it's just
we're in
crazy
the
how
era of
legit it
it?
is.
There was
Hannibal
nothing
and-
when I was a kid. You were lucky. There was one horror show on the air, and it was always canceled after a few episodes. You know, The Night Stalker only ran one season. It was real slim pickings, except for the anthology shows. Really.
Yeah, we've had conversations about the ones that were kind of fly by night from our childhood, like Werewolf and
I love
just the
Werewolf.
ones that would pop
Brimstone.
up and be gone really quickly.
Wait, American Gothic, remember that one, Raimi's one? But what are some of the ones now that you watch religiously or that you get excited about?
I
how
love
well they're?
Penny Dreadful.
Yeah,
I
think
worship
it's
that
just
show.
stunning.
When
it's
I was
so
at
good.
the convention in Virginia, one of the writers from Penny Dreadful was actually there, and he wasn't even there as like the writer from Penny Dreadful. He was just there as a fan because he was in DC for something and was like, oh, there's a horror convention, I'll swing down. And he was telling me about the show and about how they have like no budgetary limits, whatever. Anything that they come up with, they're like,
Well, that must
it.
have been John Logan because he's written every single
John
episode.
Logan's the
Look
main
it up
creator.
now.
John
It feels
Logan.
like the boardwork.
And
It's
he
like
grew up
Boardwalk
reading
Empire.
Fangoria and Starlog, John
Wow.
Logan.
That show
only-
really surprised me. I think I was 2 or 3 episodes in where I was like, it looks nice, but I'm not sure. And I love Eva Green in general. But once they do that, it's like 3 or 4 episodes in and she has like a big seance thing. And suddenly you're like pulled into the show. Like, what is this? And the second season is dynamite.
Oh, yeah.
Like that second season, it's like Hannibal's second season where I thought it was just perfect,
Yeah, I hope more people watch it because I know the ratings haven't been the greatest, but thank God Showtime gave it a 3rd season.
Yeah.
Whether it goes into a 4th season, that's going to be a little iffy, I think, because like I said, the ratings haven't been there. But I think they realize that there is a fan base, just like with Hannibal, where the ratings have never been there, but people are talking about it.
And sometimes period piece stuff, it doesn't hit as much because it's not contemporary and, and they're expensive.
Yes.
It looks expensive. I can see where the budget's going on the show. What are some of the other ones that you've...
I stick with Supernatural. I always enjoyed that show. I think they should have ended it like maybe 3 or 4 seasons ago, but I still watch it. Like last week's episode, I don't know if you guys saw it, was they did something really interesting where the whole episode is told from the point of view of the car. Like,
See, that was one of my favorite
Love that
things.
kind of
I think they did that.
fun.
Was it the season finale for 5 where the whole thing was about the history of the car?
I'm not sure if I don't remember that.
It was, it was, the whole thing was, it was when God was narrating it, the writer that was God. But it was, they do such cool things.
So all the action takes place in the car or on top of the car, and it was really different. It's nice to see them try something outside the norm, and they did a musical episode 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, that's what
I've
loved about them is like that whole season that was, I think, the 300th episode or something like that, or their 200th. That was like a big number.
Right.
But that whole season, I was kind of like, and then they did the musical episode, and it was completely meta, and it was all about fan fiction. I think it was actually called fan fiction, and it was all about the fan fiction that other people have created about them.
Yeah, I remember that one.
It was amazing, and I was like, okay, this is why I freaking love this show.
Yeah, so it still holds my interest.
Yeah.
Once in a while, well, my wife likes Vampire Diaries. I watched that with her. I'm not really too crazy about that show. The originals really bores me.
It's not quite as alive.
Let's see, what am I missing?
What are some of the new ones besides Hannibal? I'm trying to think some of the ones.
Hannibal, I watched.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was. What's that?
I was curious what you thought about the kind of re-envision of that, like given that you've seen all the other material about those stories.
I thought the actors were great.
Yeah.
The plots themselves was kind of absurd. This isn't the real world, but it was beautiful to look at.
Yeah.
I really liked Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal. I couldn't believe the gore that they got away with on TV.
Do you watch Game of Thrones?
Oh yeah, it's like
Because
my
Game of
favorite
Thrones,
show.
like even though it's fantasy, sure, but there's certain episodes. There was an episode at the end of last season that like really gave Walking Dead kind of a slap in the face. Like, we can do zombies better than you could do. Like, it was kind of insane. Where your jaw's on the ground going, whoa. Like, so I don't know. I love that horror's becoming like, even in the other genres, it's kind of being cannibalized a little bit, and which is good. It's a positive thing for the genre. Ultimately, it has to be. It's just funny that so much great storytelling's gone to TV.
Right, and it's really good stuff. There've been episodes. Penny Dreadful is better than most better than most theatrical horror.
Yeah, I think so.
American
I think that last season's
theatrical
special.
horror.
What about Michael, Freddy, Jason? Do you see them having, because there's always talks about all of them, right? Obviously, always being, the rights are always out there. Do you feel like any of them could still have a big gust of life in them to kind of be reimagined in a fresh, exciting way? Or have you just seen it so many times that you're like, I don't know, should we be moving on to other icons? Or
I think the only way I think I'd get into another Nightmare on Elm Street movie is if they brought back Robert Englund.
Oh yeah, I'd be all about it.
You know, make him the old Freddy. You know,
Yeah.
I think that would still work.
It'd be interesting to imagine somebody trying that. Yeah.
But as far as rebooting it, the last one was just so awful that I wish they would just stop. I think they could do some fun stuff with Friday the 13th because to me that was never high art to begin with. So
plus, one person played the role, right? It was different all the time.
Yeah, and I thought the remake of that was kind of fun. Texas Chainsaw, I liked I'm in the minority, but I thought the last one was really good. The one that Adam Marcus co-wrote, Texas Chainsaw 3D. The one they dropped Massacre from the title. I thought that had some good twists in it. I thought that was better than most retreads. So I thought that was well done.
And can we reimagine Halloween again? Post Rob Zombie, is there room to go back?
I really doubt it. I found most of the non-Rob Zombie ones I thought were pretty weak. I thought Rob did some interesting things. In the initial remake, I thought the first half of the movie was really good, but then when it started following more of the Carpenter storyline, then I lost interest. And Halloween 2, there was, parts of it I thought that were,
first 15 minutes are amazing, but then it's a dream. You're like, oh, what? I love the opening part of that.
And he was kind of thumbing in his nose at, the conventional horror sequel. So there were parts I liked. And I liked the fact that he made Michael Myers scary again. And but I'd love to see a new horror icon. Like you said.
I wonder, do you think something like Babadook would get remade in America? Do you think that's something on the cards?
I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't heard it announced, but I wouldn't be surprised. It did really well on the independent circuit.
And it just looked so great. Visually, it's just one of those things that surprises you because it's like a cartoon. It's very weird that could disturb you. But and it's so hard to know. What was the last new icon we really had?
Nothing that's exploded on the level of those characters.
Scream, right? The Scream.
Jigsaw, definitely.
Jigsaw, and then the Scream Ghostface as a thing.
The last two.
The last two that were recognizable.
Yeah.
And though we've had franchises since then, we've never had characters to go along with it. Like Insidious is obviously, they're pushing them forward.
But they've never had a specific villain. No. Yeah, that's true.
Not really. Yeah.
So we are still seeing some of those franchise philosophies, like Purge is doing it as well. But never like there's not a face that goes with it,
which is a bummer.
Did you enjoy Conjuring?
I did. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, it feels like The Haunting or something, like a nice throwback. Yeah,
I love that one. How do you? Do you still keep up? Having edited a magazine for so long, do you still keep up with horror on the horror sites or magazines or stuff, like, not including Blumhouse.com, because I know you're an avid reader of that site. But,
of course.
Do you still keep up to date on what's going on?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I go on the horror sites pretty much every day. Okay. I still get Fangoria. I don't get the other horror magazines, but I do. I still get Fangoria. So
did you ever flirt with the others? Did you ever flirt just to see what was out there?
Not real. Maybe I'll thumb through a copy.
But to hire Chris, they must have, right? Like, because he was coming from a magazine world, or
that was more an outsider influencing the publisher Fangoria, who never even heard of Chris Alexander.
And at the time when we hired Chris, he wasn't even working at Rue anymore. He was doing Blood Splattered Blog and working at Toronto University teaching.
Yeah, and I also had hired him to be a freelance writer for Fangoria, so he was doing
stuff. He'd already been working with us.
Yeah,
so we knew him outside of Rue, but I think he'd been gone from Rue for about a year at that point anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because Chris, I like Chris a lot. He's a really good guy, and I think a solid writer. And, he just ended his run at Fangoria. I mean, your shoes were very tough to fill, big shoes to fill indeed. But I mean, how do you feel about, Chris's approach to the magazine now that it's kind of over, like what he did with it? Because can you look at it objectively, having been, I feel like it's almost like you make a movie and then somebody remakes it. Like, can you look at the remake and be like, all right, I see what they did with that. That was kind of interesting.
Right. The one thing that I can't get over is Chris, just how he writes so much. I could never write the volume of stuff that he was doing for Fangoria. Was just amazing. He was just so prolific. It became a different magazine when he took over as editor. It wasn't the Fangoria I would have been doing, but I think what he did was probably wise in the long run, because again, everything else is on the internet now. Yeah. So I'll be curious to see what Mike Gingle does. I have a feeling he's going to maybe dial it back, less retrospective. stuff in the magazine. I don't think you'll see any more kissing Fangoria now that Chris Alexander is gone.
Not under Michael King Gold's
Not
watch.
as much Gene Roland.
No. So
That's funny.
So I'd be curious to see how he does. I think he, because he was with me for 25 years or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think his tastes are pretty much more towards what we were doing back then. Mm-hmm. But again, he's got to look at what how the sales are going and what people want to read.
Right.
But I think if you keep catering to the nostalgia crowd, but what are you going to do when that crowd dies?
And it was weird over the past couple of years to look at which covers sold well and which ones didn't, because a lot of times the ones that we would be like, oh, we're putting this person on the cover, this is going to go gangbusters, and then we'd get the sales reports and we'd be like, what happened? And then the next month we'd put like a retrospective, like the Carrie Chucky cover that we did. It was like half Carrie and half Chucky, and we'd be like, this one's going to do okay. And that one went like gangbusters, and we were like, wow, okay.
You never know. You got to kind of adjust and satisfy both audiences. But,
that was always something that would surprise, every so often there would be something that would surprise us. For instance, we did a cover, forget the issue number, but it was about it was when DVD was first exploding, and we did we put a cover, it was an image from the Beyond, and it was all about the DVDs, the new wave, blah, blah, blah. And issue sold like crazy. I thought, I didn't think that issue would do that well. It was more of a desperation cover at that time, and it was great. But every time we put a Romero zombie film on the cover, those sold. Every time we did the Rob Zombie Halloween movie, any Rob Zombie movie,
it's unbelievable.
Those issues sold fabulous.
Yeah.
Did you ever get a lot of flack for a cover you put on, like it's something that you just decided to put on cover and you heard it from the fans?
Oh yeah,
like Chris heard it from a few, from what I heard.
Twilight, we got a lot of heat. Though I think I love that cover. Even though I'm not a Twilight fan, I think it's a great cover. And that was more. See, we had there was a different editorial mentality back then. That was when Norman Jacobs was the owner of Fangoria, and he always felt that the magazine has to have a new popular movie on the cover every month that millions of people are going to see on opening weekend, and people are going to pull it off the newsstand if it's a movie that's in the current zeitgeist. It has to be something current. So that's something that we were always pressured to do. It has to be, the next big, Steven Spielberg production. Right. It has to be something that everybody's going to want to go to because, you have to grow the audience. He always felt like Twilight is a good example. So if you have that on the newsstand, if some tween girls see Twilight, they love Twilight, they might buy the magazine and they might become regular readers. So I always thought that was a wise move. So I never really fought that. But we did get a lot of shit over that.
Yeah. But was there ever one that you took a risk on yourself? Like, because you loved a movie and you'd go, because I remember Chris doing Under the Skin, which I was a big fan of. And I can only imagine that he did get a lot of shit for that.
He got shit from inside the company. I remember like emails back and forth of really that one? But we liked the cover. Bill made it look really pretty. So it was
But there were people that really appreciated that. I can't remember who it was. One of our guests came on saying, I love that was the cover of
I remember
issue.
getting stuff
it's a statement.
for,
it's Fango making a statement, right? Rather than doing a marketing trend, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So now whether that's a good idea for sales.
That was Chris had a lot of latitude on what he puts on the covers. Yeah. Back in the old days when I was editor, I always had to get the image for the cover approved by the then publisher. He had it okay what went on the cover, what movie went on the cover, what TV show. He had the final say. But the current publisher, he for whatever reason, he has no say on what goes on the cover. And I couldn't imagine, operating under those guidelines back when I was editor. But Chris had free reign. He was very lucky in that sense, that he could do whatever he wanted. So Fangoria became what he wanted it to become. It was his thing. Whether it sold or not, I don't know if he really cared. He just wanted to indulge his interests. Make the magazine that he always wanted to make.
I remember we got flagged for Black Swan. And that was one of the covers that Chris, that was like 6 years ago, I guess. That was one of his first covers. And it was one of the ones that he went really artistic on because it was complete white background. Yeah. He took out the film strip. It was just her face and the Fangoria logo. And I remember him passing it around, and I remember everybody at the company being like, oh my God, this is beautiful. This is so striking and stark. But I remember at the time, we still had the forums on the website. And one of my jobs was to moderate the forums. And this is right before we folded the forums, because they became like the Wild West, where it was like just racist slurs and people just trying to, get a rise out of you, so that I would have to sit there and just delete everything. But I remember getting a lot of the like traditional horror fans being like, how could you put this like girly stuff on the cover? This is just some ballet movie. And I remember arguing and being like, it's like Suspiria.
It's repulsion. It's repulsion and Suspiria. What are you doing?
Yeah. And I think that, after the cover came out, it actually got a lot of respect. But I remember even in that issue, we did an interview with these fashion designers, Rodarte. And they came to the New York office, I remember, and did a whole tour, and I had lunch with them and everything. And they're actually like very renowned fashion designers, two sisters who are diehard horror fans, but they also designed all of the headpieces and ballet costumes for Black Swan. And we did a whole article on that angle. And I remember people being like, why are you discussing ballet costumes and things like that?
Well, that's a fair point.
Yeah. How do you make ballet look evil? I think they did a good job.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite cover that you personally like, just in your run, one cover that you look back and go, yeah, that's pretty great?
There was this amazing run in the 80s where there was Rawhead Rex cover that I loved, the Pumpkinhead cover, Hellraiser 2. There was this like one after the other. Like when we put out a book this year. Yeah. Called Fangoria Cover to Cover, and I'll look through it and pick out my favorites, and most of them were from that period, that from in that 80s period. Those images just popped. I love them.
The one that we still get a lot of compliments on from you was the Martyrs one, and that was one of the later ones. That was like I'd say mid-2000s as well. Right. But we had that banner made, 30 Years of Horror. So yeah, it would have been 6 years ago. Our 30 Years of Horror banner, and it's got the Martyrs cover front and center. And whenever I hang that thing up at conventions, people will be like, I like that cover. Do you have that issue? And I'm like, the Martyrs? Have you even seen the movie?
It was a pretty shocking cover. The image itself was really grainy. It was like a really crappy image. Like if Norman Jacobs was publisher, he would say, get out of here. I'm not putting that on the cover. Find something better. I remember when we did our first Saw cover, the shot I had picked out was the puppet, and he didn't like it. He says, no, find something else. So we wound up putting Shawnee Smith on the cover and the contraption, the bear trap, and which was probably a good move. It was a better image. So, Chris, he was pretty lucky, and I've seen the cover of Mike Ingalls' first issue.
Yeah, it looks great.
Oh, you've seen it already? Okay, from Victor Frankenstein.
With like
to me, that's old school.
Face.
I like that. I like that. I think that's one of the best covers I've seen in a while.
Yeah,
no more film strip.
A shout out to Michael, by the way, because in the things that I contributed to Fangoria, I just thought to this day I think he's like the best editor in the business. He's really good.
He's always been one of the unsung heroes in the magazine. He's very hardworking. He's works around the clock on the magazine, the website. Yeah, he really keeps the ship sailing.
Yeah,
there were nights that I would leave at like 8:00 and Mike would still be there. Yeah. And there were nights that I would be like, oh shit, I forgot my laptop cord. I got to run back to the office, and I'd go in at 8:30, and Mike is still there.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm looking forward to his first issue.
Yeah.
I mean, we could probably talk for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
Considering, but we don't want to keep you the entire time. You have other movies to see and things to do. But sincerest thanks, Tony. Not just for coming on the show, but for what you've done for us, for Fangoria, for horror fans. For the conventions, we really appreciate it. And,
my pleasure.
You guys gave me my first job out of grad school, so
yeah. I remember giving you your first book review too.
Yep, I remember that. I was super psyched because I at the time I'd been doing research on the radio show for a couple of months, and I remember that one day Tony was like, "You want to review something?" And I was like, "Yeah," and you gave me a book, and I was super psyched about it. So yeah.
Yeah, in closing, I just want to say, only because this has kind of come to light now, considering our position at Blumhouse, doing the web thing again. But, honestly, we're all like that first convention I went to. We're all a little different. We're all a little weird. This is what we love. This is how we connect with each other. There's no need for the negativity and the bullshit. We all can have valid opinions about what we do. And it's really important for us to support other people's voices. I mean, it's people like Tony that inspired and supported me. And I don't see why we can't do the same. So yeah, just do the right thing. Be kind.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Elric. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. It's a blast.
You bet.
Good luck at AFAM.
And we will be back next week celebrating Friday the 13th because it's Friday the 13th.
That's a good reason to do it.
Yeah, so we got some good guests coming on from that.
All right, see you then.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.